Welcome to Church Jams Now, the podcast where three former youth group kids and current music nerds deep dive into Christian music from the 90s and 2000s. I, of course, am your co-host, Kylan Savage. With me, as always, is Mr. TJ Smith.
Hey, how's it going, friend?
It's going. There it is. And,
Good.
of course, we have beautiful producer Josh.
Who?
Oh, my God.
Who, me?
Oh, my God. Yes. Yes, you. But,
Nice.
gentlemen, we have a veritable barnyard today, which we will get into because we have a special guest, Ben Sooy of the Denver emo band, A Place for Owls. Ben, how's it going?
Good. What up? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. I am so excited to talk about this album that we're going to talk about, but we will get there. We've got plenty of time. Unless you have a hard out, which we haven't discussed. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, cool.
Some inside baseball, folks. And we're like 2 minutes in.
Yeah. Okay. So,
And Ben already has to leave. Yep.
right. Yeah.
Yep.
He's got 20 minutes
Hard out.
max, and then he's done. All right.
In
Cool.
a minute.
Ben, I want to talk to you, which is why I invited you on the show. God, this is
That
already
makes
going
sense,
off the
Kylan.
rails.
Yep.
That makes sense, buddy.
If you, good news. If you wanted to talk to Ben, you can.
Yep. So,
Right here, bud.
Here it is. Okay. So the first thing I usually ask people is I'm very interested in origin stories. So our show is, of course, about Christian music from the 90s and 2000s. And I want to know your origin story in terms of how did you get involved in, quote unquote Christian music? What was the music you grew up listening to? Did this come later? Was it, the first thing, the only thing you could listen to, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, that's great. I grew up in West Virginia, which doesn't have a lot going on as far as like culture.
Right. Country roads is
the-
basically
That's right.
they
Yeah,
got
that's
that.
the height of-
That's their claim to fame.
Yeah, our
John Denver.
culture evolved to the point where John Denver from another state wrote a song.
He was like, you know what I know a lot about? This place that I'm not from.
Yeah,
Let me
that's
tell you
right.
about it.
Yeah, and it's always a point of pain that when he says Shenandoah River, River is not in West Virginia; it's in Western Virginia. You're singing not even about
no.
about
Yeah.
us.
Oh no.
So there's a little bit of imposter
I missed it.
syndrome. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, anyways, I grew up in youth group. Youth group became a big deal because my parents split up when I was like 14 or 15, and the home was fairly chaotic, and so my friends that I knew from youth group and also my parents before they split up stuck me in a fundamentalist Baptist middle school and high school. So they're like, no rock music allowed. We're wearing khakis. Denim is not too far off from devil, which was literally the title of a sermon.
Oh
heard
no.
Wow.
In chapel. Yeah. But this was like, my parents are not fundamentalists. They're like mainline liberal Lutheran sort of folks, but they were just like, they stuck me in this fundamentalist Baptist school. Then quickly the home life sort of disintegrated. Anyways, so I went to like the edgy kind of cool big mega church, non-denominational youth group on Wednesday nights. And then Monday through Friday, I'm in school where like rock music is bad, right? That was my exposure to music, and I'm like learning guitar. It's wild that we're doing this album because I actually asked to, when I was in high school, I had a band called the Soybeans. My last name is Sooy,
Nice.
and we were a ska band.
Hell
Oh,
yeah.
yes. Oh, take a drink, listeners.
Yeah.
We got a great bad ska band name cited. A real ska band name. And by the way, Ben, just for the record, I mean bad good. Let's
Yes,
clarify.
yeah. No, it's not a great name, but it is my last name and soybean, so it worked. 2 O's, right?
So good. I love it.
We got asked to do music for like a youth event in youth group, and we wanted to play Big Trucks by Pedro the Lion.
Nice.
And our youth pastor would not allow us to play the song because it had the phrase "flip off" in the
Oh.
chorus.
Yep.
And he
That
was
feels
like,
familiar.
are we encouraging people to flip people off or whatever? And I'm like, if anything, Pastor Donovan, it's a it's a traffic safety song.
Yeah.
Awareness
Keep
out
your
there.
cool.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all about keeping your cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's-
youth pastors in general, I feel like are not to generalize, but I feel like subtlety within art is not a strong suit of that of the people that typically are drawn to that job position.
Unless you're the cool
There's-
youth pastor that probably only holds the job down for like a year
Yeah.
until
And then-
things start to until this shakes apart.
No,
you go.
no nuance in Pastor Donovan's mindset. So I was getting into that sort of youth group music, but I was always angsty and sad, and so I'd gravitate towards the angstiest and saddest Christian music that I could find.
You found
and
the
also-
angstiest and saddest in Pedro the
Yeah.
Lion.
All of the
Yeah,
above.
yeah. I also discovered a bunch of just music in general through the Weezer message boards. Was
Hell
an
yeah.
active part of my
Nice.
teenage life, and I discovered like Get Up Kids and American Football and like Mock Orange and a bunch of really sick emo bands from that. And that's actually where I heard about Pedro. Was not like on the youth group poster for like, if you like 9 Inch Nails, try
Right.
whatever, right?
Try
It wasn't-
Pillar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It wasn't that experience for me. Pedro, I actually heard from like non-Christian people like
Right.
that I should
Right.
like listen to it first. But then I was like, oh shoot, this guy's singing about Jesus, and so like
Right.
it gravitated right.
It clicked. Yeah.
What
Right
year
on.
is this that you like become a Pedro fan?
This is probably 2000, 2001. I graduated high school in 2004,
Okay.
and so this probably was 2000, 2001 when I'm getting into Pedro.
Cool.
I want to talk a little bit because I want to get into, before we get into the album, we'll all talk a little more of like our experiences with this album, but I want to do a little bit of like an interview kind of thing. So I want to talk about A Place for Owls a little bit.
Me too.
I feel like you kind of run in similar circles to what the Church Jams Now Twitter does. And I've always been drawn to the things that you post. And I love following y'all on Twitter. And I feel like Twitter, or X, I'm sorry, has been a really good place for your band. I don't know, what was it, Twitter specifically that got y'all the Switchfoot gigs?
Yeah.
Because
Nice.
I remember like kind of just seeing that unfold, and it was crazy. Can you tell people about that a little bit?
So one of the things that I do, just because I've seen other bands that I like do it, is one of the first things that we got noticed for, we were just like, hey, Wendy's, the hamburger restaurant.
You came out swinging, Ben.
Yeah, I think you'd like Denver emo band A Place for Owls. And we asked Wendy's for like 2 months to listen to us. And then finally Wendy's, this was like our first, when we just had singles out or whatever before our first LP. They listened to one of our singles and they were like, oh, sick, sounds like Jimmy Eat World. That just like made our lives. We're like, the poor son of a bitch that manages the Wendy's Twitter.
It's like, God damn it, I
Said
gotta
them-
listen to this emo band. They keep bugging me.
Yeah. But he said we sound like Jimmy Eat World. So,
That's amazing.
so I just got into a habit of whenever I would see that someone was like, if Dave Bazan was on Twitter again after not being on Twitter, I'd be like, Dave Bazan, listen to my band, and
Just hoping to catch him in a vulnerable moment.
yeah, exactly. Or like,
Oh, okay, sure. Why
I've got
not?
3 minutes to kill. Yeah.
Switchfoot announced that they're doing this 20th anniversary tour for The Beautiful Letdown. They're
Mhm.
one of their biggest records, the record that they broke into the mainstream with.
Right.
And they misspelled Denver on the poster. They called it Denver, Colorado,
Denver.
with an M. And so I quote tweeted and said Denver. And then like 7 or 10 of my friends just immediately were like, Denver. And then John Foreman, like 7 or 8 tweets down of people just saying Denver, comes into the comments and says Denver. And so I was like,
Yes.
okay, John Foreman of
Playing
the
along.
San Diego emotional rock group. So I just said, hey, at John Foreman, at Switchfoot, whatever, I think you'd like my band. Check us out. And then Tim, his brother Tim, plays bass in Switchfoot. Tim Foreman. Tim shows up like an hour later, like not a specific amount of time, and just said, "Yes, thank you for recommending this. I do indeed like this record."
No big deal.
Okay.
You're right. And I don't think I would not be playing guitar right now without the Meant to Live riff.
Right.
Like,
for sure.
It just like changed. I was like, oh, you can play in drop D. Like, it was just
yeah.
Game changer.
Yeah.
Ben, this is the podcast for you. We are your people. Yes, like that is, I 100,000% relate.
We're on the level, man, with all this.
Yeah. So anyways, so we thought nothing. The group chat explodes immediately because we're all youth group kids, right? And so we're just like, can you fucking believe that Tim fucking Foreman? Like, he liked our, like, the dude that wrote the bass parts to the thing that made me think like, oh, you can play bass and be funky or whatever.
Right.
He listened to our album. So we explode internally and think nothing of it. A month and a half later, we get an email from someone who claims to be the booking agent for Switchfoot and says, "Hey, are you available to play with them on these 3 dates?" It was Denver, our hometown show, Billings, Montana, which Nick Weber, who's in my band, he's from Billings.
Okay.
And Salt Lake City. I was like, yes. I literally, yelled, "What the F?" as loud as, like, and Daniel's boys are upstairs, and they're like, "Uncle Ben, we heard you yell."
Busted.
Yeah. So, but then Daniel, I run up to his office and I'm like, "Did you see about Switchfoot?" And he goes, "It's a scam. It's like it's not someone's absolutely trolling. Like, who, what, why?"
That
like,
would be my first thought, honestly.
Yeah. So,
no.
anyways, we Google searched this guy. He actually does work for this booking agency. The booking agency lists Switchfoot as one of their clients. We're like, okay, let's at least engage with this like it's real.
Sure.
Right.
Until they ask for $500 or whatever
Right.
of a deposit.
Yeah.
Anyways, it was real. So we opened for them in Denver. We opened for them in Billings, Montana, and Salt Lake. And we had just toured Salt Lake earlier this year in April.
Nice.
And we played to 35 people at a pizza place, and then all of a sudden we're playing the one big capacity club. We're playing to 2,000 people in Salt Lake. It was a wild experience.
That's unreal, man.
That's so cool.
I love it. So the moral of the story is bother people on Twitter, and you might get a cool run of some opening show dates.
The moral of the story is, TJ, you got to get on Twitter, man.
Apparently. Jeez. Nothing has convinced me so far, but this might be it.
Yeah.
It's I think about it in the terms of like marriage or whatever. It's only got to work once, like
It's true. Yeah.
You're not wrong. That is so true.
It's true.
Man.
It's true. Now, okay, I want to shift over a little bit. Oh, I do want to say, everyone, listen to Denver emo band A Place for Owls, because you guys are fucking rad.
Denver, Kylan.
Denver. Sorry.
Denver.
I want to switch over to It's Hard to Find a Friend and Pedro the Lion in general. So I will say also, one of the reasons I really honed in on wanting to get you on the show was you tweeted like a month or two ago, randomly, you said something about Anathala.
Oh, right.
And we covered Anathala.
I forgot about this.
As a TJ wishlist record.
It's true.
They are a big band for TJ.
Yeah, all the records you listed, when Kylan sent them to me, I was like, wow, him and TJ are going to be best friends. Like,
yeah. I was like,
Great minds.
This is a
say?
TJ wishlist guest, and he doesn't even know.
Yeah.
And we settled on It's Hard to Find a Friend, the 1998
Oh,
album.
we didn't settle like this was like the fifth or eighth choice.
No.
we kept
this
shooting
was
you down.
immediately...
Nope, pick another one.
Yeah.
Pick another one.
No.
Then like,
We were thrilled to decide.
So excited.
To cover.
Yes. As I said, I think we talked in our 2022 wrap up like, who are your dream guests? And I've been saying David Bazan, like, from day one. Like, I think when we published the first episode of the podcast, I was like, I'm going to start a Twitter. I'm going to message Dave Bazan. I'm going to see if he'll be on our show. And it's that same kind of, hubris is not the right word. It's that same kind of
Pluckiness.
Like, yes.
Moxie.
Moxie's good. I like that.
Naivete.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you for bringing
Little
us
less generous.
back down to earth. Yeah.
I describe it as holy. You're a holy fool. You're just like, you're a
Ooh, I like
dumbass.
that.
Yeah.
But you're
But sometimes
something
it
really
works.
pure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There are like a few bands, like Pedro the Lion fits the best within this. Like, you know, we've done a couple bands, like I would say Rocket Summer or Love Drug, that are Christian adjacent.
Right.
Right.
But still, we're on Tooth and Nail or whatever.
Right. I'm pushing for like brand new episode, Paramore episode. Pedro the Lion seems to fit the best within that, and I've been so excited to talk about it. So I want to talk about why you love this record and why you want to talk about this record tonight.
Well, it was one of the first things I heard that sort of blew my mind as a burgeoning guitar player. So again, it was a lot of it was Drop D, which was after learning, you know, Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles or whatever. Like, that was like the next thing to sort of figure out how to do riffs. He also, it's a 3-piece. It's Dave Bazan and a bass player on this album, right? So Dave's playing guitar and drums on the record. It was so minimalistic in approach. So because he's recording himself, but he's not doubling guitars. There's essentially one guitar part that acts, and the bass sort of acts like a second melodic instrument. They're both playing counter melodies to each other. So this just blew my little mind. And there is a deep earnestness about this record that really connected with me, and a deep cynicism that really connected with me. And Bazan is one of those that I've never seen anybody else be both the most hard on their sleeve, tender person, but also the biggest cynical son of a bitch that you've ever met, you know, like, and he somehow in his
what he
songwriting,
does well, man.
Yeah, he embodies both. And it was great. And even, you know, at the time I had a lot of feelings because, you know, like, my family of origins falling apart. The girl that I really liked in high school didn't like me. I'm not a particularly good student, but I was really good at like choir and band and speech and drama and that sort of stuff. And so I'm trying to figure out, who am I and what value do I bring to the world? And I felt, even at 15 or whatever, like a tortured, misunderstood artist that the world didn't get.
For sure.
And so
we don't know anything about that, Ben. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. And so
we don't relate.
All that sort of I found intuitively. I would not be able to like at 15 when I first heard this record, I wouldn't have been able to verbalize it that way to you. But that's all the things that I found about it. And it just I also did discover Death Cab around the same time. And
which Death Cab record in particular?
We have the facts, and we're voting yes. So the only way that I can describe it is there's a grayness to both records. Like they're not bright and colorful. There's just like even the production choices on, when I was listening through earlier today to It's Hard to Find a Friend, I'm like, this is wild. This is not the how-to of how do you make a record that sounds good, but it sounds the best that I've ever heard.
That 1-2 punch of being 15 and discovering Pedro and Death Cab is just...
That's what's wild to me, though, because I know if I was 15 and I heard Pedro, I'd be like, this is slow and soft and boring. I want Under Oath or something like that. But you were into it. So I was like, wow, good for you, man. You got some patience.
I did not get into heavy music until there were heavier bands that friends were into that actually had good lyrics. Lyrics have always been the thing that I'm
see, I
into.
told you, TJ.
Mm.
Ben's going to be your new best friend. You're going to start a new podcast with Ben.
Yep. Ben jams now. Let's go.
Yeah. So it wasn't until Me Without You, Brother Sister that that was one of my first heavier records. I hated
Kind of unlocked it for you a little
yeah.
bit.
I hated Catch for Us the Foxes when I first heard it because I was like, this is not music, you know. And
Right.
Love that.
Right.
I love that record now, but and then it was Thrice and Thursday were two of the heavier bands that the guitarist in the Soybeans, my ska band from high school, Ward was into it. He actually printed off the lyrics for songs from Brother Sister for me, and he said, just read this as poetry.
Mhm.
That's
And
so
then-
good.
yeah.
I love that.
That was the thing that got me into heavier music. So the slowness, I didn't want fast. I wanted slow and melancholy.
That was your
It's
speed.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
You were like, this is mellow and laid back, and we're in our feelings.
Yes.
It's perfect.
There were years in that era where I would fall asleep to either We Have the Facts and We're Voting Yes, or It's Hard to Find a Friend, or one of the slower Pedro records.
They're just like part of
Wow.
your subconscious now because of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
That's great.
Okay, so I want to know from Josh and TJ, what is your context with Pedro the Lion in general and this record specifically?
Well, I got into Pedro a little bit later, probably like within the last 10 years. I haven't really even gone like back this far fully. Like most of my Pedro stuff is like options and on. So, or not options, control. Yeah.
Control.
Is Control. Options my favorite song on that record. From Control and on, that was the first one I got into. And so I haven't done all that much and like listened to some of Dave's solo records since and then I really love the new Pedro stuff he's been putting out. The last two records, like when Phoenix
Josh,
came out.
we've talked about that. Like,
Yeah.
so fun fact. So Josh and I regularly, I'm sorry, TJ, we don't include you in this, but we know that you hate lists.
He doesn't like lists. Yeah.
But Josh and I will regularly just randomly text each other, here's a band or artist, give me your top 10 list. And we just recently did Pedro. We did our Pedro list, and
Didn't we have,
both
like,
of us.
We had like 5 that were like in the same order too, like same song,
Mhm.
same placement. It was
Mhm.
a
And there was a
huge
lot
amount.
of newer Pedro the Lion
Yeah.
on both of those.
So yeah, I love the newer stuff he's doing with the last 2 records. So like, yeah, when Phoenix came out, I was like, this is the Pedro that I want, where it's like a little bit bigger. The Dave's real into minimal production. I love a little bit more fuller maximal production. So it's still minimal, but it's like really sounds good and everything. So honestly, I think I'd like maybe thrown this record on before, but like this and like Winners Never Quit, I think I've listened to once or twice, but not like didn't like dig into them. All my Pedro stuff is like I'm aware of the first 2 records, but most of it is Control and Onward for me.
Right.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar. I was aware of Pedro kind of through the mid-aughts, like high school, like late high school days for me, but never super into those records, Control and Achilles Heel and all that. Like I was just kind of aware of them, and I really didn't know anything about this record. I knew it existed. I hadn't really listened to it at all. I fell head over heels for Curse Your Branches. So
Yeah.
David
that makes
Bazan's
sense.
solo stuff, like that hit me at the right time in the right way. And it was this synthesized articulation of the same critiques that I was having and issues that I was kind of working
Right.
through, and felt kind of like you said earlier, Ben, like this perfect balance of being so emotionally genuine and raw, hard on sleep, but also bringing some critique and some cynicism to the table that we all, I think, experience in our own way from time to time. And I liked a lot of the other albums. I really liked Care, but some of the other ones in between, I wouldn't say they got lost on me. I just like didn't delve into them as much. So it was kind of like Curse Your Branches hit, and I was like, okay, this is great. And then I kind of dabbled with those older Pedro albums a little more. Like I had been aware of them, then I was actually listening to them. Mostly Control. Yeah, and then really like Care, and obviously Havasu and Phoenix. Those are money. So
Right.
that's kind of I'm a little bit of a mishmash when it comes to my knowledge base with Bazan and Pedro as a whole. So this was all new to me.
Oh, that's great. I love
Nice.
that.
Yeah, it was interesting.
I'm very
It's cool
excited
to comb through it all.
get into that.
Yeah, Kylan, what about you?
I just now realized that we've kind of gone out of order. Josh, I usually ask you to do our little research corner before we get into this, but
That's fine.
you know what?
It's fine. Switch it up.
I'm feeling emotional. You know, I'm feeling
Hard on
the
sleep, buddy.
vibes. Yeah, exactly. This feels
is the one
right.
for it.
This feels right
Yep.
for the Pedro episode. Okay, this record I came to a little bit later. Control was a really big record for me, and I have a, I don't know if it's a fun fact, but it's a fact. My high school band, The Truth About Movie Stars, when we came out with our Black and White Affair EP, that was 2007? No, 2006. The guy that we got to mix and master the record, when we gave him all of the tracks, he was like, "Hey, give me a couple of albums that you really love, that you kind of want this to sound like." And he was some like random guy in Siloam Springs, Arkansas, who had a studio. And at that time, I was super into Plans, Something About Airplanes by Death Cab, and The Dust of Retreat by Margot and the Nuclear So-and-Sos. So I had no context for like what he was going to do with the record. And the reason for me that this is a fun fact is because if you listen to this, you will have no idea, because it does not come across at all, and there's no way to verify this. But I gave him those records, and he was like, "Oh, okay, cool. You want this to sound like Pedro the Lion?" And I wanted to sound like really cool. I was like, "Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure."
That's what I meant.
And he mixed it, and in that time I was like, okay, I think I should listen. Like, this dude is like
Check
really
this band
cool.
out.
I should check out Pedro the Lion. And Control just like blew me away.
Nice.
And then Curse Your Branches came out, and I saw Dave Bazan do, I don't know if it was on that tour, but I saw him do that album.
Was he
at
doing
the
it
Texas
with a
Theater.
band or in house shows?
House shows.
Yeah.
House shows. And then I went back and I was like, oh, well, fuck me. Like, why have I not been listening to this from day one? like this is incredible.
Right.
And then this album became, it was big in my rotation. Listeners of this show will know that I typically hate long songs, long albums,
Mid-tempo stuff.
Tempo.
mid-tempo. But, there are also a few exceptions to that rule. The National is my favorite band. I am a multifaceted cinnamon roll of a man.
Cinnamon roll of a man.
And this
Contains multitudes.
Yes, this album has been big listening. It's a big road trip album for me. Specifically,
So you can fall asleep.
Well, so everyone else can fall asleep.
Okay,
So
there you go.
Josh, I guess now I should hand it over to you to give us some context of who the heck is Pedro the Lion?
Oh,
What the
I
heck
would
is this album?
love to tell
give
you.
us some more context.
I do want to ask Ben real quick, though, because you mentioned Dave touring, and I do want to ask Ben, did you see because we were talking about Me Without You before we started recording, did you see the Pedro Me Without You tour a couple years ago?
No.
Oh, no.
I know. I saw Pedro on the Phoenix tour when they got the band, the full band sort of back
Cool.
together. And
I
then
bet that was great.
Yeah, brother. And I've seen Me Without You like 6 or 7 or 8 times in my life, and saw them both on the Brother Sister tour and the Farewell tour, but I did not see them together.
Oh, dang. It's like the ultimate like bands tour, it felt like.
Right. Yeah.
Your favorite band's tour. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, brutal.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, I will do some quick research for us. Pedro the Lion, originally from Seattle, Washington, but Dave is not from Seattle. He has 6 records coming out talking about where all the places he's from, actually. So 2 have already come out. So pay attention to the next 4 that are coming out. I am very excited for those. The career is from 1995 to 2006, where he then hung it up and dropped the Pedro moniker, went Dave Bazan for a while, and then brought it back in 2017. And he's gone on record saying that he kind of regrets having so many different like side projects, and he's like, just do it under one name. And I was like,
Right.
yeah, it's good. I tell Kyle that all the time.
I know you do. You do. I want to
I'm
start
just quoting
like
Dave.
6
I'm
million
just quoting
bands.
Dave
I
Bazan,
know.
man. He seems like he knows what he's talking about.
Good wisdom.
Yep. And then, as Ben already mentioned, for this record, it is Dave Bazan playing everything except for bass, which is played by Jonathan Ford. This record, It's Hard to Find a Friend, was released originally November 3rd, 1998, so it just turned 25 years old, which is pretty great timing, Ben. Great job on that. It did get remastered and re-released by Jade Tree in 2001. This was Pedro's debut full-length LP, originally released on Made in Mexico Records and then reissued by Jade Tree again, produced by Dave Bazan. Songwriting credits, I thought this was funny, is that they're all written by Dave, but his little music publishing for CSAC is Juan the Owl. So there's Pedro the Lion and Juan the Owl. And then fun fact is I saw that 3 of Pedro's, so Pedro has 8 songs with 1 million plus streams on Spotify, and 3 of them are on this record.
Wow.
And that's all I
Cool.
got.
Okay.
Nice.
Before we take a break, Ben, do you have anything else you want to add? So usually we split our recordings up into 2 different sessions, and we do this sort of like walk down memory lane kind of thing, and then give our predictions on whether the album is a flop or a bop. But this week, we already listened to it. So before we get into our part B, I want to know if there's anything else that you want to say about this record.
Well, I think that this one, among the folks that love Bazan and Pedro the Lion, this record, It's Hard to Find a Friend, seems to have found a sort of like cult-like status. For whatever reason, it was Dave made the decision to do an anniversary tour both for Control, which is the big one, right? That most people, like the gateway drug for Pedro
Right.
records. And he also did an anniversary of It's Hard to Find a Friend. And he played every song from both records, but on shuffle. So they did not play it front to back. So
Interesting.
this one, and we'll get into it when we get into the actual songs, but for whatever reason, it seems like for Dave Bazan and for the sort of ride or die fan community, this one is like a holy grail level record, I would add.
Sweet.
That's
Love
good
it.
context.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll prevent us from all the folks out there that are really upset about all the facts that we mangle. You're at least getting ahead of that part of it for us. So thanks, Ben. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll be the Bazan lore keeper.
Okay,
David.
Thank you. We need that. We need that.
Dave Bazan is essentially my Bob Dylan. I obsessed
sick.
over this dude's songwriting and have so many thoughts. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break. You're going to listen to some ads, and when we get back, we will deep dive into 1998's It's Hard to Find a Friend by Pedro the Lion.
Hey, jammers. I always feel weird saying jammers. now.
Why? It's the best.
Because we don't do it consistently enough.
we only do it whenever it deserves to
Not
be
overused.
used.
That's true. All right.
save it for
Hey,
special occasions.
jammers. Thanks for taking time out of your podcast listening experience to join us here in Adland, where we're going to talk about Collide Records.
CollideRecords.com, in fact, is the URL that you would want to go to experience everything that Collide Records has to offer. And it is amazing. What do they have?
They got all kinds of music that you could want. CDs, vinyl, music that we cover on the show, that a lot of artists that you'll hear here. And then also just other artists is not limited to that. So you can pick up something that you're hearing us talk about on the show, and then something else, that just came out from a big time artist. They got anything that you want, really. U2. They got that new, Songs of Surrender, that big old box set.
They got that.
So, and the cool thing is that they've got big releases, but they've also got some like pretty niche stuff in there that like is hard to find, especially if you're looking at CDs. I've picked up a few rare CDs from Collide, and it's pretty cool. So they got some good stuff on there to find. Stuff that you can't really find in print anymore.
That's the coolest thing, for all of you haters out there saying that we sold out. I'm
glad you said that, Kylan.
that
Everyone's
90s
saying
movie?
that about us these days.
Listeners, he just waved his finger. He wagged his finger at us.
This is legitimately staying in the
Please,
for
please.
sure. We love Collide Records, man, because the inventory that they have is just astounding for music nerds like ourselves. And for our listeners, if you find something that you really like on colliderecords.com, at checkout, if you type in Church Jams Now in the promo code section, you get 20% off.
That's so good.
Your first purchase, yeah. You get 20% off your first purchase, which is
Amazing.
just
I think we
super
can
rad.
all confirm that it does work.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We've all confirmed that it works, which is
Very
so
cool.
cool. Yeah, I love being able to partner with Collide Records. I'm going to say it one more time, and then we'll get back to the show. Visit colliderecords.com, and if you find something that you really love, when you're checking out in the promo code section, type in Church Jams Now for 20% off your first purchase.
Sweet, sweet savings. Do it now.
Oh, no. That was good.
Welcome back to Church Jams Now. Hope you enjoyed those ads as much as we enjoyed making them. We still have Ben Sooy here from A Place for Owls. We have not taken any time. Usually we take a week to listen to the record, but guess what? We already did.
We're so prepared today.
I know. We are
We're
so
on it.
prepared, so professional. I do have to ask before we go track by track, does anyone have any general thoughts about this album?
I have a question that I wonder if Ben could answer, or maybe either you two gentlemen. Do we know about the album art? Do we know if it was like a photo from the session tracking it, or was it a random picture of a drum set? Do we have any idea?
Yeah, the lore is that it's Dave's his first drum set. So when he wrote the song on one of the later records, my first drum set, that's the drum set.
That's the drum set.
Yeah,
Nice.
Wow.
yeah. So
That's
I think
cool.
it's from
Kit.
I think it's from the session or from recording around it.
Cool. That's great. I was hoping it would be something like that. So
Dang.
Sweet.
Even
Love
for some reason, for me, I always get this, and the only reason I feel secure switched all the time. So even when TJ mentioned the artwork, the only reason I feel secure artwork came up to my head, and I was like, no, wait, it's the drum set one. I
Yeah.
just have to remember which is which.
Well,
Yep.
I first heard the discography a little bit mixed up because I came of age in the not Spotify, but Napster era and Kazaa, and
yeah.
So the first exposure that I had to Pedro the Lion was just a bunch of random songs from records that were already out, and then it was after the fact that I researched on early days internet, what albums are they from, and then begged my mom to either order them online or take me to an actual record store or the Christian bookstore because they were distributed there
Wait,
too.
which Christian bookstore?
Oh God, it was Lifeway.
Yes. Okay.
Mm.
CJN listeners, take a drink.
Take a drink.
It's hard to imagine that Pedro the Lion would be in Christian bookstores nowadays. That's crazy.
Dude, he was
no way.
solidly ensconced in that scene, and in the even though Jade Tree was not, which was his main label, was not, to my knowledge, known for putting out Christian records or whatever. They would just put out
Right.
emo or what we might call indie rock or college rock stuff. But yeah, man, it was one of those if it got sold at Lifeway, then it's approved by mom and
Yeah,
dad already,
same.
right?
Yep. Stamp of approval. Also, great use of the word ensconced, Ben. Thanks
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and dive right into it. Pull a Steve Curtis Chapman with track number 1 of Up and Coming Monarchs.
Sunken ships rest upon the ocean floor, where I made my home.
This was for whatever reason, this was the track that I had the least thoughts on. I have vibe thoughts on this song. It is it's lazy. It's almost like there's a slowness to it that's just like there's like it's uncomfortable for a guitar player to play that slow, which it makes sense that Dave Bazan, the drummer, because actually the hardest thing to do is keep time the slower that you get. Like it's easy to keep a tempo when you're playing fast or whatever. So that's the only thought I really have on this track is just like a vibe thought.
Well, and I was going to ask about the drums. Like, do we know, was this cut on tape? Because there are some moments that feel like actual cuts, and there's like a pop at a certain point that feels like he either punched in or it was like looped, that it was like copied and pasted drum parts, which is interesting because it almost has this like chopped and screwed kind of postal service feel. But if it's tape, then that's like actually it's right in that liminal space of like the analog to digital world.
I mean, it's recorded in '98, so it's got to be digital interfaces were not widely used.
Right.
And dude is mostly recording at home, or at least demoing at home at this point. So yeah, I would imagine, I don't know for a fact, but I would imagine that this is to tape.
That would make sense. There's a specific moment. There's one around 225 that sounds like it's the vocal. There's like a cut kind of thing. And then there's another spot that feels like it's just the left pan of the drum track around like 230 that has like a little cut, a little break. And you can hear kind of the sonics just changing and then coming back. And it's kind of interesting. Like it I couldn't tell if I liked it or hated it, but it drew me in and it made me think
it's
more.
the rawness of it.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Totally.
So the most interesting thing to me about this song is we just talked to Davey Basinger from Bleach. Their last record, Farewell Old Friends, from 2005, also starts with a song that is kind of slow and in 6/8. And the coolest thing about that was like it felt like a band that knew what they were doing and were leading you along. You know, they were like holding your hand. As a musician, it feels like a super confident move to open an album with a song that's mid-tempo in 6/8.
Yeah.
It's for me probably the weakest track on the record, and it's a big dick energy to just be like
for sure, like exactly,
it's a bold
like
move.
Okay, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, because there are a couple of songs that you would be like, oh, this could be an obvious choice for first song, but it's like I'm putting this here.
Right.
Yeah,
it's the one you would least expect probably.
It's kind of wild. And like TJ said, I don't know if I love it or I hate it. But it drew me in.
The part that works for me is the bass line and just how
sweet
the
bass.
whole song, so sweet. And it's super warm, you know, it's very like catchy and it just rocks you kind of gently. It's like it feels very warm, even in spite of some very melancholic kind of slacker vocals that are overall pretty sad. You know, like it's like bummer indie rock for sure, but the warm bass line carries you along and just like balances that out a little bit for you. But yeah, it's a weird choice for an opening track.
Yeah, and my big note was Dave saying, "I'm going to start my first record off with a song about draft dodging." That's how I want to put my mark in the world.
Right. And it's a cool, like, I wonder how much of it, because I feel like one thing I noticed over the course of this album that I've seen him do more and more, and to better effect maybe as his career has gone on. But the one thing that's interesting is the way he kind of blends metaphor and autobiographical content. It's not a straight ahead analogy or story song. It's not a straight ahead biographical song. It's kind of this weird muddled mixture. And yet it works, you know. Like I think you have to be kind of good at what you're doing to be able to pull that off. To use a giraffe dodging analogy, it's like, where did you get that, man? Where did it come from?
The hook of the chorus is Canada's not what she used to be. Like
Right.
What are you saying about me?
Not gonna be touring in Canada anytime soon, Dave.
Yeah.
Right.
It's-
Crazy.
That's great. So Ben,
Pretty
this
out there.
is not your favorite song on the record. Just
Correct.
wanna. Okay, cool. I'm excited to find out what is. as
Okay,
we go through.
my last note is more songs should reference mermaids.
Agreed.
There's not enough
Yeah.
mermaid content in music in general.
And that whole line is great. The mermaids teach us how to breathe beneath the line that now divides action from apathy. That's a
Mhm.
great line.
It
It is
really
good.
is.
I vaguely know what that means. Like I
Right,
kind of
yeah,
into
yeah,
it. Yeah.
Well,
In a
that's
sense,
that
I get
that's
it.
the whole thing, right? Of like, it's a little bit. Ben, you said like Dave Bazan was like you're Bob Dylan, and this feels very Bob Dylan, and kind of going back to what TJ said of like the autobiographical mixed with the metaphor, like it
Yeah, for real.
feels very like classic myth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right when you think you're on the same page, you're like, what the fuck was that?
He changes it up a little bit. Yeah. Keeps you
Yeah.
guessing.
You think about it a little
Yeah.
bit further, and you're like, well, that doesn't quite work for what I was
Doesn't,
thinking.
like,
There's something
really
else, right?
makes sense, but
Right.
vibe-wise, yeah, I'm here for it. I love it.
Yeah, and it's more accessible than like a Radiohead lyric where he's not actually singing about anything, right?
Yep.
Just
Right,
other
right.
than what the feeling is.
Yeah. It's
but
1
he's-
degree more accessible.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Pedro
Which
the
is
Lion,
cool.
1 degree more accessible.
More
than Radiohead.
accessible than Radiohead.
I love that.
That's the selling
All
point.
right. Well, the longer I lay here, the more I want to talk about the next song. Here we go. Track number 2, The Longer I Lay Here.
The drum machine or whatever the metronome
Yeah.
stuff that he's got
It
going
sounds
on.
like a straight up metronome, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's also clearly analog in a room with him. You
Yep.
can hear in the acoustic
The room.
guitar tracks and the vocal tracks, you can hear the chair squeak that he's sitting on.
Hmm.
So I really am drawn into like the just the realness or the like this is a human being because sometimes especially with bands that have become huge for me, I'd like think about them as godlike or whatever.
Right.
And it's just that this is a 20-something dude in a room,
Right.
home recording, doing this stuff himself.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is interesting about this song is I have a vivid memory of having a debate with a guy in high school about this song, whether it was about laziness or masturbation. What's sin? Like sweet Jesus, I need you, forgive me this sin. Like, what is he?
Right.
What is he repenting of in the song?
Uh-huh.
And I'm on the team of it's laziness. But he goes,
Mhm.
no, listen to him sing. It sounds so ridiculous. He's saying dick. It's
Because he has to rhyme with lick this. So
Yikes. I mean, look, if he wants to interpret it that way, that's his prerogative, right?
I mean, he literally says laziness in the song.
Yeah.
yeah,
And with a line like excellence, industry, diligence,
yeah,
it's kind of obvious
yeah.
the dichotomy he's creating there,
I
But
don't
it's
know.
also
I
great
might
'cause
be
I just
team
feel like-
masturbation, which is maybe
You
the
would be.
weirdest thing I've said on this
We're
show.
definitely using that out of context. We are absolutely pulling that for the socials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you know what?
That's the cold open
I
for
see
this.
it. Yeah. No, I see it. That makes sense to me.
All right, man.
Cool. That guy from high school got another champion, another convert.
Yep. He's winning souls to his cause.
Yeah. There's also a minimalism to the approach to this song. Again, it's like I didn't have the language of slowcore or whatever
Yeah,
when I was listening to this record for the first time, but it's just like there's so much space between each strum and even the guitar solo that just happened, the bow,
Mhm.
bow.
Yeah, I
bow.
think it
There's
starts at
just
125.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous amount of space. You're not like, again, there's a confidence that I perceive
Mm-hmm.
of you're not anxious that people are not going to pay attention to you unless you're really zippy and quick or whatever.
Yeah.
There's just like here's what it is.
Yeah, because he's like, this is a good song for track 2 after my draft
For
dodging
track
song. Like,
two, right?
Dave, what are you
yeah,
doing,
it's
bro?
wild.
Yeah, it is really wild. Like, what a choice. And like I talk about like try hardness and how that kind of is a turn off for me with a lot of music. And he is like the antithesis.
Is anti-try hard.
To your point,
Right.
Ben. He's just like, this is what it is, man. Like, I don't care.
Bazan had a tweet just very recently reflecting on how most of his music career has been coping for his profound laziness and undiagnosed ADD. Like the choices that he's made have been like, I couldn't even imagine holding a desk job. And so I went into music because I somehow thought that would just be easier. I could be lazier, like
Totally.
doing that.
To support our theory about what this song is about. Ben.
Yeah.
And not
Like,
Kylan's.
that's real life.
Yeah, and it's wild that I view him, he's a tour dog. He's on the road
Oh,
all
yeah.
the time.
For sure.
I view him as like one of the hardest working songwriters that's doing it. And he certainly worked really hard on the craft of being able to write a killer hook and engrossing guitar parts and bass lines. And it's not like that's all just intuitive to him. He clearly has labored,
For sure.
over
Yeah.
that.
No, I mean, he always has an album coming out within, like, what's the longest he's had a gap between records? Like 3 years maybe or something? 4?
maybe.
Yeah. And then even in those, because I don't know if you guys were tracking post Curse Your Branches, what the Care and the Blanco records, those came out because he was doing this thing where he was releasing a song to like, whether it was Patreon subscribers or some
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
it was
it
a
was.
subscription-based thing. I remember that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it was a song or two, like an A-side, B-side single once a month. And then he pared that down. And I'm forgetting which record came first, Care or Blanco, but yeah.
Blanco's first.
Yeah. So he pared those songs down to be Blanco. And so like dude's working hard,
Yeah.
but in ways that seem lazy to him. So again, one of the themes of this record for me is self-loathing and spiritual self-loathing.
Mhm.
And he's so goddamn hard on his characters. Now, whether the characters are him or a proxy or whatever else, he does not seem to like his narrators.
Yep.
Yeah,
right.
I'm so glad that we have lore master Ben here because there's a lot of these songs that are taken from different characters and stuff like that. And like, I'm like, obviously Dave's not writing the song about himself for certain things, but this was one I was like, I feel like there's some autobiographicalness in here. So, but from what you're saying is like, this seems like one of the more autobiographical ones on the record.
I think so.
Because that's what I was feeling, but I was like, maybe that's just like good songwriting. So.
I mean, it could be either way, but I do feel like he is one of those that is hard on sleeve in that way.
Right. Well, not to be like too pedantic about it, but I feel like some of the most effective songwriting is like the more specific you can get, the more universal it can be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah, and he sticks to those like simple, big truths and issues that are both personal and become universal. So, and I feel like when you see him live, that becomes even more evident because a lot of his banter in between songs reflects the read of like a lot of these songs are very autobiographical, even if there is some like big myth kind of stuff happening and some metaphor and mermaids, like there's still also plenty of actual Bazan in there,
I'll mention this. So I saw him play these songs live in David Bazan 2023. He played like Secret of the Easy Oak and Promise and very Christian songs. And he only and this was actually, I perceived it as creative. He changed the lyrics like 3 times on the album in order to, I think what I read from him is more authentically embody what was going on in the song based upon where he's at right now.
Yep.
But then he even talked about how like there's a lot of baked in misogyny and hate of like resentment towards women. And like, there's just there's things that like he viewed himself when he wrote these songs as more emotionally immature
Right.
than he perceives himself now. And to see him now go back to these songs and pull them and figure out what can I authentically embody
How
still?
can I make this work? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's
wild.
hard work.
Yeah.
To instead of just choosing not to play them, right? Because
Yes.
he could have done that. He could have been like, you know what, these songs don't work anymore. He made
Yes.
the more difficult choice and the more interesting choice, in my opinion, of like workshopping them, making them work in 2023 for yeah, like you're saying, what's authentic for
Ben,
him.
I'm
so
really
cool.
curious as a creator, as a songwriter, how you feel about that. Changing lyrics, because I could go either way. You know what I mean? Like I'm often of the opinion that a song is a time capsule,
Yep. that's
right?
me.
Like it is a crystallization of how I was feeling in this particular moment about this specific thing. And so revisiting that work, is that something that interests you, like with the songs you've written, or
You
I don't
can
know.
if a song doesn't resonate with me anymore, like I feel like it was a little bit angrier or more resentful or more immature than I am feeling currently, I typically, thank God, almost no one cares about my back catalog of my old bands or whatever,
right.
because there's no expectation that people bring to me of, oh, you have to play this one song from your first album from 2006. I'm like, brother, that was like 6 projects ago.
Right.
We're not,
Yeah.
we're not, no one knows that shit, But if there was an expectation, I don't think I would be able to fulfill that for people. And that's what Bazan did for the longest time. When he played live, people would request Secret of Easy Yoke. We'll talk more at length about that. But like, it's the big, earnest, Jesus-y one. And he, for about 7 or 8 years, did not play it. Like, absolutely could not play it. People would request it and he'd be like, I'm so sorry, I'm not there anymore. When he played it live, he was like, I've now found pieces of this song that feel really good to play it again. And I don't know what that means for him spiritually or theologically or whatever, but like it wasn't just a money grab. Like, I'm going to play all the songs from the album.
Right.
No, it was that he arrived there in that place as a person.
That's right.
That's so cool. Yeah, I feel like my take on it is like kind of like you're saying. Josh, Kyle, and y'all agree a song is a time capsule?
I'm a time capsule guy.
I think so.
Yeah.
So I kind of see both. I think the recorded version of the song is the time capsule that meets that need.
But
You'll always
how
have
you
that.
interpret
The
it
listener can
live
go and listen to
is
it.
what's
Yeah,
different.
and then the way the artist gets to sort of play with form and decide to make changes if they want to, can bring it into the present moment, right? Whatever that is, whenever that is, 2073, 2023, 2003. So I feel like I've got a song that I changed the pronoun from he to she because that feels more correct for me right now. And it's a one word change. That's it. That's the only
One
thing
letter
I've changed.
change.
One letter, yeah, thank you. Even more minimalistic. But it really does make all the difference, and it makes it something that I can sing authentically and in a grounded way that feels correct for me. And you can still go listen, if anybody cares, to the original version. And hear that. I feel like it's kind of this pliable thing. You can have the contained song that is and always will be what it was when it was originally recorded and live that way, and you can play with it.
Yeah, for real. There's an interesting thing that I think happens with the songs where they're both owned by the artist and they get to determine what happens with it, but it's also owned by the appreciator of the art.
Completely.
And they have their own ownership over it. Like Jimmy Eat World's Lead My Skeptic Sight, that doesn't mean anything related to faith or God or to Jim Adkins from Jimmy Eat World. That's not what he's singing about.
Right.
But to me, when I heard that meant something spiritual to me. Right.
And both are valid.
Exactly.
Which is what's so cool about this podcast. This is the beauty
of this podcast, man. Yes. Okay. Ben,
this is just like the rest of my notes on this song that were like the mix of things in the left channel And Delayed and to the Right is interesting.
Hey, Josh, I noticed that too, buddy.
And honestly,
with you.
when it came on, I was paying a lot of attention to it, and it was a little disorienting to me. But then as I listened, I
too.
didn't listen. As like I wasn't paying as much attention to it. Then I was like, okay, cool. But too much, I was like, whoa, just getting
Yeah.
left or right here.
Well, there's some crazy panning
leg.
choices where vocals go like quick to the left and
Mhm.
then like come back to the center.
Center. Yep.
Or there's one song, The Longest Winter, drums are 100% in the right ear.
completely
Right.
panned.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
It's wild.
So weird.
He was listening to a lot of early Beatles or something.
Yeah, for real.
I
That's
thought the
the
same
Beach
thing.
Boys. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sweet. Okay, well, let's move on to track number 3, Big Trucks.
Dude, what a riff.
It's
It
so
is.
good.
What-
It's so good.
What a riff. This was the one that made me want to pick up the guitar and learn it the first time I heard it.
Right.
Nice.
He's doing these really weird chord shapes where if you're playing in drop D, you play if you're a musician, you play the root with, your first finger, but then you're playing the third of the chords all the way up
Right.
there on like the D string, right? And he's doing these lead parts on the guitar where the chord is just this bar right here, but then with his pinky or whatever, he's playing a lead melody
The
at the
riff.
same
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Crazy.
It blew my mind when I first
And that's like
heard
a signature Pedro thing, like a signature
Yes.
David Bazan thing. Like you kind of
Yes.
know when you hear that, you're like, oh, that's. I think that's Pedro.
Yeah, and
Which is cool.
there's a bunch of bands that are in sort of DIY emo circles that I interact with and love, who they're just straight mine in that vein. Like they're
Right.
they're
Ripping
ripping
it.
it. Yeah. And
I get
it
it.
still works. It
Yeah.
goes. Yeah.
Totally. I like that we finally get a lot of energy. That
Right.
was
Yep.
Yes.
I needed
Yes.
that
For me.
You know.
Thank God.
Yeah.
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 I love and hate it. I'm like, why did you not give me this before?
At the
Yeah,
beginning. Yeah.
But okay.
But it's
like,
But
yes,
he almost
Daddy,
goes-
thank you for giving it to me now.
We're
Yeah.
here now. Yeah.
he almost goes over. He swings too hard. Where this is the almost poppiest chorus you've ever heard in kind of a
sure.
cheesy way.
For
Right.
sure.
And so it's like it goes from the confidence of there's nothing going on and you're gonna like it, but and then like a bunch of stuff is going on, big chords. He hasn't played
Mhm.
real big chords yet.
Mhm.
Right.
I don't know. It's baffling.
It
Yeah.
really is.
It's definitely the most accessible song on the record.
For sure.
So normally we pick a favorite song on the record. I'm doing something a little bit different here because I was mostly new coming to this record, but I knew a few songs. I'm having an old favorite and a new favorite.
Okay.
Oh, I
And
love that.
Kylan will know this because we did our top 10 Pedro list, but this was on my list. This was the only one, I think, pre-Control that was on my list.
Yep.
So this is my old
Oh.
favorite Pedro song on this record.
This was on my
Nice.
list too, but not this version.
Oh.
There's the
Oh, the slower
acoustic
one?
version.
The acoustic version from The Only
Yeah.
Reason I Feel Secure.
Yes.
And it's, to me, it's the same thing as 405 by Death Cab,
yes.
right? There's the full
Oh.
band and the acoustic version.
I always go
And
back and forth which one I like better. I don't know.
I
on 405.
prefer
Yeah.
the acoustic on both.
Yes.
Ooh,
Mm.
okay.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
The acoustic one is wild because it sounds live, right?
Yeah.
It sounds
exactly.
like this is an official release, and yeah, fuck yeah,
Right? Yeah, exactly. Ben, you get it, man. Yeah.
But it's wild that before streaming, and records only came out physically, you could put out the same song on 2 consecutive records and trust that almost no one had heard it.
Right.
And it wasn't, you weren't making an intentional artistic choice of, I love this song so much that it has to have 2 versions.
Right.
The label or your own sense of marketing said, that's the catchiest song from the last record. It did not catch the world on fire. It was not a hit.
Right.
So why not re-record it again? It's just, again, the 90s, 2000s were a different time in how the music industry, like
Worked.
the thought process, right?
Yeah,
For sure.
that's fascinating.
Yeah. Man, this song
Yeah,
though,
this one is great.
it's just like such genius but simple like storytelling, and like it's a song that I'll like something will happen, and like if I start getting upset or something like that, and like lyrics from this song will like come into my head as like,
Right.
hey, like you're so young, you don't always jump the gun kind of stuff, like
Yeah.
hey, keep like I just love like a lot of Pedro songs are like real bummer songs, but
Yeah.
this is like
Mhm.
such a great positive one, and
Yeah,
It's
it has an
wholesome.
uplifting
yeah, it's so
message.
wholesome.
Yeah.
It has a great message.
Mhm.
Yeah, there is
It's
listeners.
almost
oh, sorry.
well, no, I was just gonna say it's almost like an Aesop's fable. It's like
Completely.
there's
Yeah.
yeah.
What about
It's-
driving
it-
big trucks?
It has
Yeah.
yeah. It has a cultural layer and then like a deeper mythical layer. Kind of like we were
Right.
saying earlier. There's like
Mhm.
that kind of transrational truth happening, but it's through the lens of like, yeah, big moose trucks and 87 Trans Ams.
But there, he also threads the needle of the sort of autobiographical concept album
Right.
on this, because it comes into play later, but specifically, talking to his dad and saying,
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
father to
there-
son.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's like a father-son
father, son,
concept
dad,
layer
I
to
don't
this whole
understand. It's like, okay,
album.
then you're set up for something later in the record.
That's right.
And it's so good. It's so confident.
So what's wild about how Dave Bazan talks about this record is he viewed himself as emotionally immature, or maybe like spiritually immature. There's like a self-loathing to it. There's like
Right.
a resentment that happens towards others. He's not as kind as he maybe wants to be now, but songwriting wise, there's nothing immature about what's happening.
Right.
Like
Mhm.
arrangement wise, it's
Mm.
it's amazing that this dude came fully formed. Like I want to
Right.
hear his shitty high school bands.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I have
This is
two
the early stuff that
questions.
we get. What have we not
Right.
heard?
How old was he when this record was made?
Josh, you want to do that math? You got
Does
the
anyone know?
Wikipedia in front of
Man, I
you?
don't know
Does
when he
anyone
was
know?
born though. Yeah, I gotta look when he was born.
Come on, Josh.
I'm gonna
Come on.
guess
Use
20.
that fast
22.
math.
I think
my guess.
I intuit early 20s from this.
Yeah.
Okay, 76. He was 22. Did you
Yeah.
get 22, TJ?
Oh,
Yep.
nailed it.
Yeah, there you go.
That's great.
I did see one time. I saw a video of Ben Gibbard covering this song, and I can't find it anymore. So if anyone out there
Oh, man.
has the link,
Really?
send it to
That's
us.
cool.
I did. Yeah,
Well,
it was just solo acoustic, and he played. He's like, I'm gonna play Big Trucks. I was like, what?
Dude, Ben Gibbard played bass for Pedro the
saw
Lion
that.
on like one tour.
Yes.
Yeah, they're
I
Seattle
How like
buds,
what a flex
right?
to just be
Yeah,
like,
right.
oh, it's my bassist Ben freaking Gibbard.
Ben Gibbard.
Well, dude, also Ben Gibbard wasn't Ben Gibbard at that point. Like,
right.
I think We Have the Facts and Photo Album had been out from Def Cab at that point in history.
Right.
Oh, I thought it was
And-
later. Okay.
That's
So
at
they
least
were
my
both
memory of
kind
it.
of like up and coming and making moves at the same time.
Totally.
Yeah, that's really neat.
All right, guys. Let's move on to track number 4. Suspect fled the scene.
So this is like an Old West sort of like vibe.
Mhm.
You have to come into town on a horse and ride out of town, like escape town on a
Right.
horse.
Which may possibly be why it's my favorite song.
I knew it was your favorite song. Okay, this is in the running for my favorite song. It's not.
It's up there for me.
That's great.
I love this song.
It's very high up there.
It's so good.
TJ, tell me why this one.
I love the Western sort of pastiche of it all. And like, again, like to me, this is the perfect synthesis of that kind of like transrational blending of real life and like a little bit of metaphor. Like he's using the kind of Western villain character to, I think, maybe identify quite a bit with that person that everybody's kind of judging. They don't really understand. They don't know the impact of their actions. And I love the symmetry of the song, like, yeah, leaving the way you came, and the imagery of like riding in on the horse and riding out and not feeling like you belong in a place. There's so many like layers to, and even the chorus, just that refrain, that ongoing refrain of "it won't go away," like this pervasive feeling of like, well, you don't really fit here. You've done something wrong, whether or not you actually did, or if you're just a scapegoat. whether you maybe had good reasons for doing something that these people that are judging you couldn't never understand, the lack of inclusion. Like he's just kind of like he's nailing all these things and doing it with such economy and efficiency. Like there are not a lot of lyrics in this song, but I still
but they're
feel
so good.
so many feelings.
And you already get like so much of like the townspeople. Like he just drops a couple lines in there that makes you question like, are the townspeople actually like good? Like for like it's so economic.
Yep.
This is a rare Kylan Savage Church James Now lyrical note. TJ, I feel like you will appreciate the fact that this is lyrically my favorite song on the record.
Yeah. No, I do. I love that. I think it's so good.
The where damning rumors drip from holy tongues is maybe like all I want in a lyric.
Yeah,
like it's
so
that
succinct.
perfect synthesis of.
But it says so much.
Yeah, it
Dude,
really does.
The bridge here, where just it's the acoustic first, and then ride as fast as you can. They're shooting to kill. There's such in this song sympathy for the bad guy, or the one who's perceived to be the bad. There's
villain.
empathy and kindness there. Yeah,
100%. Like I hope you make it, man. Like ride fast, get out of dodge.
yeah.
Please survive.
Yeah,
because like I said, I think he's relating hard to this character.
Yes.
Like that's how I felt. I was identifying with that character from the beginning.
Not the people in the ivory towers.
No,
you didn't identify with them. That's weird.
I just didn't. I don't know. Can't explain it.
I know that Kylan loved this song because it's basically an entire movie in a 3-minute song, which is
it's so cinematic. I love it, and like
really
the way that he's kind of muddying the water on purpose, like we've kind of referred to time and time again. It really makes me lean in and think more about every line, even though it's so simple or short. There's also so much happening under the surface that he lets your imagination do the work with, to create the meaning that you need to find in it. Kind of like you were saying earlier, Ben, about like in a way the artist has ownership of the song, but in another way the listener has full kind of interpretive license with the song and where it takes you.
I want to talk about the musicality of the song too. The melody is like straight Beach Boys, Beatles.
Yes,
like,
I think that's another reason I love it. Is because it has these like kind of classic early pop rock sensibilities.
Right. Yeah. I wrote that too. The like, it's almost like 50s pop inspired like crooner stuff.
Yes.
Right. Like those walk ups feel very like specifically the chord turn on I Know. It feels like it's that half step that you don't expect, but you also fully expect.
You're like, this is right when it hits.
You want it.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes.
The instrumentation is wild too. I was struck by the lead guitar parts.
Oh, I love it.
This is one of the first songs that had both the acoustic and like he is doubling a guitar part. He's playing an electric part and an acoustic part, but just again, so tasteful, so an economy of part. He's playing the exact right notes at the exact right time.
It's so simple, but it just draws me in immediately. Yeah,
it works.
And
man.
does he hit? Is there like a minor 4 in that like first like the turnaround, and then like he's like outlining it a little bit with that, or there's something either a minor chord or a minor 4. But I was like, it just oozes with like that emotion. I was like, oh, I love that. Yes. So satisfying.
Yeah, which just pairs perfectly with the story that he's telling,
Right. It really does.
And the drums are also like so in the pocket, but kind of leaning back just a bit, kind of like we mentioned in the past.
The vocals are right here and super dry. Like they're just they're like right dead in the center, and you can hear there's almost no reverb on it. And there's just like you can hear every little mouth, or whatever that he's doing. It's again, wild. You would not be taught to do that in recording and mixing and engineering school.
Right.
No. And yet, I love it.
Yet it works. You got to know the rules to break the rules.
That's it, man. That's it.
Okay, guys, there's so much more of this album. Let's move on to track number 5, Bad Diary Days.
So this is the absolute saddest, I think, song
Mm-hmm.
on the record.
Rough.
This is also the
And-
most streamed song on Spotify
Oh my God.
from this record.
That makes so much sense, actually.
So
It's got to
he
be on
wasn't,
some like breakup playlists, you know?
yeah. So Dave was not married to his wife at this point. He sadly, I don't know if it's, I don't know how to comment on other people's divorces or anything,
Sure.
but he did separate from his wife
Recently.
fairly recently. But
Mhm.
it was his, that had been his wife for years from his early days.
Right.
But he weirdly, not only here, but he sings about divorce and infidelity and
Quite a bit.
ideating about divorce just all the time.
Mhm.
Right.
And again, sometimes it's in the category of like, this is a religious metaphor, like God is the husband in,
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
of minor prophets and their prostitute wives. But
Yep.
like,
Yep.
this one is just filled with resentment and sadness.
Mm-hmm.
It's a character because he's not married at the time, right?
Right.
But this is, I think, where Dave, I think, would say, like, I was a little bit angry at women in general
Right.
at this
But,
point in
you
life.
know, you think about other emo songs of this quote unquote era. This is like, to me, in my mind, this is the grown up version of Jude Law and A Semester Abroad by Brand New. Right? Like
Right.
it's
Right.
it's the same kind of sentiment of like,
Yeah.
I hope you crash and die, but I'm also kind of a piece of shit. I don't know what it is about the lyrical content of this song. Like, it feels really mean, but it also feels a little more grown up.
It's hanging out in the complexity of what a relationship is
Yeah.
Right.
And
a little more.
you think that maybe if she is indeed stepping out, you think from the narrator's perspective, his anger is deserved and righteous in some level.
Right.
But
right.
we also don't know all the ways that this narrator, is an immature and manipulative piece of shit.
Right,
completely.
Like,
It's a
Yeah.
very like
An
Paul
unfaithful narrator.
Giamatti
Yeah.
song. Right?
Yeah.
Like this feels like right? Like it feels like, okay, I'm this immature
That's so
man
good.
child, but there's a certain level of faux maturity to it.
Yeah.
It's also crazy how quickly it turns, because it starts the first line, barely ever fight. She knows that I love her. And then literally the rest of the song is
It's
about
like, fuck you.
the negative stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. The one line that's like to establish like, oh, we have a good relationship.
Right.
And then everything else is like,
Well,
just
it's
trash.
she just has a funny way of loving,
Right,
like
yeah,
that's
it's
if that's how he actually feels, that's the saddest shit I've ever heard.
Right.
And
completely.
right.
Yeah.
think about if the gender roles were reversed in the song, and this was a woman singing this about a husband,
Mm-hmm.
you would almost just
You'd be like, fuck
the
that guy.
complex.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah. It would
complexity
break your heart.
almost is simplified, but because it's a dude, and because I know the grossness of how I make myself the victim, and this
Mm-hmm.
emo of this era often gets called rightly male manipulator music,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
because
completely.
it's
Yeah.
and I think it's the most toxic thing about the genre and the scene. There's so much, whether it comes from a female perspective or a male perspective, it often, emo's very dude. Yeah,
Right.
but what a fucked up thing to create a worldview where you are
Mhm.
always the misunderstood victim,
Oh, yeah.
and to never take ownership over how you've harmed or hurt. Now, there's so many
Right.
people who have harmed me, but I can't stay there, and I can't write.
Yeah, you're not going
there.
to spend
Yeah.
energy, kind of like just wallowing in it, right? Like,
Yes.
we talk about navel-gazy songwriting a lot on this podcast, and how that can really be a turnoff if it's too sort of self-involved and almost like narcissistic. Even if you're hating on yourself, that
Yes.
that skews toward the opposite side of narcissism, right? So if you're like, Well, my whole world's horrible, but even the self-loathing that you've kind of hinted at that you're picking up on in this album, what I'm hearing is like when David's talking now about his early work, he's sensing that he has grown and that he was experiencing a little bit of that kind of navel gazing, self-loathing stuff. And look, we all have been through that.
Right.
Like
We've all
in
been
our own
22.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
But and so to neither victimize anyone nor villainize anyone, but to say like, yeah, there's room for growth here. But dude, this song is a bummer.
But
Like,
this is
so
like
sad.
this is
down.
a quintessential emo song for better or for worse.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Like
It's like
it-
an emo song
totally.
for adults, though. Like,
Yes.
That's what I'm talking
sure.
about. The Paul Giamatti
Yeah.
of emo songs. Like it feels more grown up without actually like doing the work of
Yes.
but as a 15, 16, 20-year-old, there is something relatable about it
Yes.
that feels incredibly specific and autobiographical. And yeah, I 100% do not think Dave Bazan would write a song like this today
Right.
within the context of that. Like, I appreciate it for what it is trying to communicate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and even
that make
just
sense?
as a time capsule, kind of like y'all talked about before, like it you have to have the early work to show the growth of the modern
Right.
work, right?
Yeah.
And
And-
I get it. It's hard to talk about this as like four dudes.
And I mean, no, maybe
Right,
it's like
like-
a
Yeah.
Tootsie situation. Like he swapped the gender roles so that you like view it from that perspective. Like, man, that sucks for that guy. And then you're like, oh wait, this is how a lot of women feel. So I don't know,
Right.
maybe.
Mhm. Yep. Sure.
Could we talk about the music real quick?
Yes,
This is
please.
the first. Yeah. So the bass and guitar are doing counter melodies with each other on the dun
Mhm.
dun dun
Dun,
dun.
dun.
You
Yep.
don't, and it's also in a. I didn't actually count it, but it feels, whether it is in an odd time signature or not, it feels like it's like in 9 or 10 instead of 8 or
Mhm.
whatever, because there's that added on beat of kaka kaka,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
my brain at 15 or whatever latched onto that as what's going on here.
Right. Like this has an arrhythmic component. What's happening?
Yeah,
That's interesting.
but then this is also the first time that the guitar got distorted. And
That
fairly
outro,
ro-
dude.
yeah. So it's the first time that things have gone hard.
Yep.
In,
And the drum sounds are even noticeably like heavier, like they're fat,
Yes.
and that crack of the snare is like
Yes.
huge, Also, I love that cereal line. The breakfast cereal talked more than we did all day long.
yeah,
That's incredible. It's so
It's visceral.
sad. And
you
it is
hear the
amazing.
snap crackle pop of
Yeah,
of
dude.
Rice Krispies or whatever. Yeah,
And the silence,
yeah,
the deafening silence that happens immediately after the snap crackle pop falls away.
yeah.
Ugh.
Ah,
Gets you right in the gut,
so
man.
good.
Guys, what movie do you think they saw for the 2 tickets that are? We're creating this lore here. What movie are they seeing? That are
So
the 2?
this is 1997 or 1998.
Right.
Oh baby, was it? It was Armageddon. Is that?
that 2000?
Wait, that might have been 99.
Oh,
No, that was 98.
love the-
but it was
was
probably not when he
98.
actually wrote it. Yeah.
I love the apocalyptic nature of that guess, though, Ben.
Yeah.
she's stepping out. She's like, I want to go see Armageddon.
Well, I'm guessing. Okay, Armageddon is the movie he wanted to see, but maybe she wanted to see like Chocolat. Like,
There you go. Yeah. So she
Dude,
went with
I'm-
somebody else.
I'm
Right.
seeing. I just googled big movies in 1997, and I'm seeing Kevin Costner's The Postman, and I'm also seeing The Fifth Element. So that's in my head canon right now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Cool.
I like that. In
What a
my
weird choice.
mind, okay, this is also so weird, and this is another attempted pivot for me to turn this into a.
Yeah, I
movie
threw you a
podcast.
softball with this question, Kylan.
Yeah. You set him up, Josh.
I
We all
feel like
knew.
it's got to be something with Laura Dern. I don't know why.
Oh,
I cannot
completely.
explain.
Like a twist. Wait, is Laura Dern in? Was she in Twister? No, it was Helen Hunt. I'm sorry.
It was Helen Hunt, but she was in Citizen Ruth in 1996, and for some reason in my brain, Citizen Ruth makes a lot of sense. 'Cause that seems like a
Yeah.
movie that like a dude in 1997 would be like, "Well, fuck no, I don't want to see this."
No
But
way.
in
Yeah,
retrospect, is like a great fucking movie. I don't know.
But the guy that's the affair guy that wants to appear as more sensitive than her deadbeat husband.
Yeah,
is like,
yeah.
yes, of course I'll see it.
Mhm.
Exactly.
I'll take you to this movie.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh,
Also, entirely unrelated, hard pivot here, but I told Kaylin that when I first was listening to this song, I thought it for a second. I saw the title out of the corner of my eye, and I thought it was called "Bad Dairy Days."
Also
And,
cereal. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, there's a tie in there. And then later I asked her for her hot take on the song, and she said, well, dairy can be a real problem. And just like a bad relationship with dairy leads to constipation, a relationship with this girl leads to heartbreak.
Succinct.
that's valid. I'll
Yeah.
take it.
Yeah. I think she nailed it.
I think so. All right, guys, let's move on to track number 6. We're only halfway through this album. The Longest Winter. This has been the longest episode. Here we go.
Dude, this is the one with the drums panned all the way to the right.
Yep.
And the acoustic is panned all the way to the left. It is like a Beatles song from the early 60s, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Is that a chair squeak in the very beginning of this song?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to play it again.
Again, you
quick.
hear the chair.
I like that's like
That's-
kind of a through line. It does make it
Yes.
feel more immediate, more live.
Yeah. And pieces of a whole, like it's connected.
Yes. We're used to the fingers on an acoustic guitar sliding back and forth, right? But
Sure.
this is like the chair's a character in the
In the album.
narrative.
Another
Yeah,
instrument.
completely.
Dude, I love that.
Also, this song kind of riffing off your earlier point, Ben, about the time signatures. This one's in 6/8, but it's got the accents on 3 and 6 rather
Yes.
than like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 1,
Right.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yes.
Really odd. And then there's like a bar of 3 as like a turnaround at a certain
Right.
point.
Yeah.
Which really, it was kind of getting my drummer brain going, like, what's this? Drew me in. Pretty
So
cool.
much space between every strum, right? Like this is the loneliest. I mean, obviously it's a song about isolation and in your studio apartment with a cat for a wife. Like there's the
Dude, that line.
then
That
I
line
mean,
is
that-
so
dude, yeah.
good.
The cereal line got me in the last one, and the cat for a wife line
Yeah.
in this one, just like,
this is blurring the is this a character or is this the author?
right?
And how much of that matters necessarily in this context. But dude, this
Mhm.
is a real lonely song, and there's like a sense of talking to yourself.
Mhm.
Like this is something that Bazan
Right.
does a lot, and he'll do it in the bridge. I'm blanking on the actual lyric, but the bridge, I think right now is kind of a sad pep talk or like a sad indictment
Mm.
of the character, right?
Right.
It's-
Yeah, even the line about it being your way or the highway, like asking yourself that question.
Yes.
Oof.
And dude,
Right.
especially knowing Dave Bazan's story a little bit. So the reason why he broke up Pedro the Lion as a band is because his main collaborator, T.W. Walsh, and he could no longer see eye to eye about shit.
Right.
And he was like, well, at that point, TW had become as much of a member of the band as he was in sort of his own mind. And so he's like, well, if we can't see eye to eye, then I'm just going to do a solo thing. And the first thing he did before Curse Your Branches was this EP called Fewer Moving Parts. And
Mhm.
it was his own statement on a leaner, meaner, just me doing it, fewer moving parts. There's a sort of like both a F you, I can do this by myself sort of a feeling,
Right.
but also a sadness of why the fuck can't I actually cooperate with anybody
Figure
else?
things out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why can't I collaborate? Why can't we be together in this?
Mhm.
there's just this through line of, and it's weird to have I've met David Bazan in like a house show setting, but we're not friends, right? But it's weird to have a relationship through someone's art where you're just like,
Right.
bud, I just want you to find belonging.
Yeah,
I just want you to
Yes.
feel like you belong
Yes.
somewhere, and that you've got friends and co-conspirators and collaborators, and that people are on your side. I want you to feel that.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what's so fascinating to me is, there's one read of this song coming directly after Bad Diary Days, where it is that sort of like she left me sort of perspective, which potentially like was the intention when this came out, but having
Right.
a lot more context, which again is like this, the whole thing of this show is that hits so differently. I don't know, I found myself with this song in particular like really kind of juggling the original intention with how that changes over the years. Like
Mhm.
honestly, like at this point for me, like feels a little more sincere because it doesn't feel like it's just being sung to this woman that left. Like Ben was saying, it's like to potentially like another collaborator of the, it's this like whole self-loathing. Like I'm kind of a piece of shit.
It hits pretty hard, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also love, Ben, that you brought that up, that it's like him speaking to himself, because I was kind of interpreting it as like more of that father-son dynamic, like the older man speaking to a younger man, like, love well, young man, while you still can. Once your leaves turn, you won't love again. But I kind of love that it's him talking to himself.
Dude, okay.
I think it works on both levels, which is great.
Okay, so whatever. Can we play the next song and talk about it?
Sure. All right. Let's move on to the
Okay.
next song.
Let's go.
Track number 7. When they really get to know you, they will run.
So this one's another one that that Bazan talks about as carrying some internalized misogyny.
Some baggage. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like I actually, when I skipped ahead, I thought it was going to be the father-son song, whatever the.
Oh.
I was going to make a point.
Oh
but
man.
then-
Okay.
Yeah.
Make your point anyway, man. We can edit this. It's not live.
Yeah.
So when I saw Bazan live and he played it, so it's in the Dad, I Broke a Promise to You. That one, which is
That's the bells.
The bells,
Bells.
yes,
Bells,
yes.
Yeah.
And it's at the end. It says, "I understand, son."
Right.
Dave sang, "I understand, self."
Right. Yep.
So he reframed that father-son dynamic in the narrative to essentially be self-parenting.
Right.
You can have a dialogue with yourself,
completely.
and be the dad to yourself in some ways. And that could be profoundly sad because, it's like a lot of us have complicated relationships with our fathers, and we wish maybe that we had gotten more either direct care or gentleness or like whatever. But like, I don't know, that blew my mind when he did it live. I hated it.
Through songwriting and performance.
Yes. And I hated it at first because I was like, no, it's about a father-son and it's kind of God. And then
right.
like,
You liked the story song part of it.
Yeah.
You didn't want it to be this like kind of cathartic self-healing moment.
Yeah.
Right in front of everybody.
But when I sat with it and I went home with it and I was like kind of stupid of like, oh man, like was that okay for him to do? But then I was just like, what a healing moment.
Right.
Yeah.
With that switch to, I no longer need to ask forgiveness from my dad, whether that's like an earthly father or a heavenly father or like whatever else. Now we got to live with each other. So asking forgiveness when we've actually harmed each other is still good. But that's not what the song was about. The song was, I disappointed my own sort of sense of right and wrong. Like I knew that I did wrong.
And then deciding that
Yes.
you still love yourself in spite of that.
That's
or
right.
even in the midst
Yeah.
of that. Yeah.
I've got the
And
context.
what I love about that too is that you were able to see it as not only him having that moment for himself, but it seemed like you were able to receive that as him modeling that, not
Yes.
just for himself, right? It wasn't just a selfish moment. It was him saying like, hey, I'm going to go on stage and I'm going to have a little bit of vulnerability and like walk the tightrope a little bit and show y'all that you can do this. You can offer this to yourself. And I'm going to be the one that kind of like goes out on the limb and tries it, and to show you all that you can do it.
Yeah. And the banter that he had when between songs where he would give context to like, you know, the one that I fucked up. When they really get to know you, they will run. Before he played it, he was like, I think that if I wrote this now, I would not write it this way, because there's just like an adolescent male uncomfortableness with what the natural female body does. Like,
right.
Women naturally have hair on their legs, man, and hair in the armpits.
Right.
But there's like a line, whether you're supposed to sympathize with the narrator or not, whether you're supposed to be like, oh, there's a little bit of like a layer of, he's saying, I don't like girls the way they are. But then you're like, is that okay? Like, we don't, like, is that good or bad? And it blurs it. And it was, I think he was trying to be more pro-woman at the time when he wrote it, but then realized weirdly after the fact that he was like still he had not arrived.
He was still kind of othering their experience and not really owning it or understanding it.
That's right.
Okay, yeah, because I view that song as like an indictment on dudes that think that stuff. So like for me, it seems very pro. Like, hey,
I think that
you guys
was
are dumb. What are you
the
doing?
intention
Okay,
and the attempt, and also I feel like the moment where it's like it's at the beginning, I think, it's the bridge. I don't like girls the way they are.
Yes.
You know, and then he says we can pretend that it's natural. Like what? Like I feel like the issue is, why should we have to pretend that at all? Right?
Yeah.
Like why? It's not real life, man.
Yeah. So it feels I think it feels to me like more adolescent. And that's, I think he's trying to prop up an adolescent narrator so that you go like, that's immature or whatever.
Right.
But there's still the baked in adolescence of it, because there's this super ambiguous line in the middle where there's like a little break where he says, I'm starting to think that I'm kind of shy, or at least I'd like to be.
I'd like to be. Yeah.
And that's so like, it's when you see them live and they play this song, this is the line that everybody screams. Like, I'm starting to think that I've got to, or at least I'd like to be,
yeah.
And there's, I think, an identification. It's the same thing when you go back and, you know, like when we all were into Brand New, you hate that guy. You think he's a son of a bitch, but you also see yourself in him.
Right.
Or
it's also kind of similar to like everyone at Five Iron shows bringing blue combs. It's like you're so close to like getting it.
Right.
Yeah.
But it may be like a little more personal to what like the songwriter was intending.
Right.
Yeah. And even he's like maybe now owning like, I don't know if I was really being honest in that moment, if that was really like effective or true at the time. Like it's a little bit of owning that.
Yeah, he realized that he was closer to the narrator than he would have liked to have been, or whatever.
Dang, yeah.
Right. He can't use the narrator as like a straw man or like a fall guy. He's like, I am that guy. I was that guy.
Yeah.
A little too much autobiography going into that instead of like the narrative.
Could we play the next song? And I want to talk about, because Minor Prophets is related to this, I think.
Hell yeah.
I'm going to do the Leonore from 5 Hour.
Run our show. Run our show.
Dude, I'm here for it.
I'm trying to get done. I do want to mention in this song, the lead line right at the end at 2:20, there's one that comes in that it's like not fully flubbed, it's like slightly flubbed, but it's like he just like kept it. He's like, I don't need to retract that. Like it's fine. Yeah. So I was like, wow.
Good enough, man.
It's like the first one that comes in.
Yeah, it's a little
I guess it's more flubbed than not, I would say. I would have retracted, but he was like, it's fine, we'll leave it.
Okay. All right, here we go. Track number 8 of Minor Prophets and Their Prostitute Wives.
So this one, there's the metaphor that's going on. So it's Hosea
and Gomer.
and Gomer, but Hosea is also the whole point of when God in the book of Hosea said, "Go find a prostitute wife," was this is what Israel is to me. So the intention from the beginning was that God is identifying with the experience of Hosea as the husband who is cheated upon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And Bazan, so there's layers. So then Bazan is embodying the experience of Hosea, who is also kind of embodying the experience of God, and saying, okay, writing these lyrics, and there's lines like essentially male manipulator energy. There's
Right.
lines
Completely.
that are there's lines that are like they're all, the whole town is like trying to kill you, and they'll listen to me if I, but the implicit
Mhm.
is the only way that I'll put in a good word for you with the lynch mob is if you come back to me and be
You
my wife
behave.
again.
Yeah.
And you
right.
behave, you be my wife again, and you implied have sex with me again, right? So
Right.
this is a wild thing to be in the Lifeway Christian bookstore, because
Right.
if
Sure is.
if this is written from the perspective of God, then God seems to come off as a male manipulator
Yeah.
in this song, right?
It's again,
wild.
it's the narcissistic like pseudo victim. Like, oh
Yes.
well, I did the hard thing and I married you and that makes my life so difficult. So come back to me, play by the rules,
And
and
I want to know
everything will be okay.
right. I want to know the intention of a young David Bazan of why did he write that? Was it genuinely from a perspective of he wanted to preach a message of there's safety in these arms of mine. These rules that I've given you are actually for your good.
For
Is
sure.
he at that point like he's trying to advocate
being
for the
genuine?
rules? Yeah.
Or is he being like a little tongue in cheek and critical of that model
Yeah.
and that paradigm? Yeah,
Yeah.
because if you take the chorus out of context of the rest of the song, I totally accept that and receive that, and I think that's beautiful. Come home, darling. Come home quickly. All's forgiven. Come home quickly. Like, what's not to love about that idea, right? Like, just kind
Right.
of pure, simple, radical acceptance, radical forgiveness, unending love. Of course. Who doesn't
Right.
want that?
Right.
We all want that. But then when you add these sort of caveats, or like even just the way we're identifying the characters, like, I treated you as if you were a princess and you treated me like a cop. Like it's so,
Oh, man.
it feels so preschool, or like
Yeah.
something. It's like, it's very childish. And
Yeah,
and
it wasn't
still
until
the Gomer character is dangling from the end of a rope. Like, what?
Yes.
Why? Sorry, Josh,
Yeah.
what were you gonna
no,
say?
I was gonna say it wasn't until because like I know the story obviously from the Bible, but it's like okay, yeah, and the metaphor of like this, it represents God and Israel, whatever. So you're like, yeah, this is like Jose is the good guy here. But it isn't until like the last line of like, darling, they will listen to me, and it's also like in Dave and like how he delivers it that I was like, oh, there's a
Yes.
little bit nefarious kind of
100.
like implications here that I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's
oh,
creepy.
okay.
They will listen to me.
Yeah, but I think that's I'm sure that's like Dave's intention. Like it's got to be like he wouldn't have sang it that way if it wasn't, right? So
Well, it's like,
Yeah.
but then he's putting into question like the doctrine of hell and judgment as it's been taught in his form of American Christianity, right? So he's again, this is really like, how is this in the Lifeway Christian bookstore? How did
Right.
I?
They
as
didn't
a
have
youth-
a critical listener
No.
choosing how to curate
Thank
their
God.
music
I'm surprised it didn't
Thank
even because
Hosea,
like
thank David Bazan.
well like and even
Yeah.
the title like they're prostitute wives because I know like the Showdown had an album that the first song was called Fanatics and Whores that they had to repress that record without the first song because Lifeway and Family Christian Bookstores wouldn't carry it because the song title said Fanatics and Whores in it.
Wow.
Like odd the title was. So I was like, the fact that
Did
it
you-
was able to
do you
keep
remember-
that.
Do you remember Derek Webb's, I am a whore, I do confess,
Mhm.
and how like just the
The
case
dust
that
up.
yeah
Like,
the case that the
happened.
dude made of like, I'm just saying the word that we could say, I am a prostitute, I do confess, and I put you on like a wedding dress.
Right.
What's the difference between that and saying whore? It's just it's a wild sort of like give and take within because you could call David Bazan a prophetic voice in the church, and even from now as sort of outside of the gates of he's no longer identifying with Christianity,
Right.
but still trying to reform the thing that he came from
the
in a
outside
weird
in.
way, from the
Yeah.
outside in, right?
Right.
If you actually read the Old Testament, Jeremiah sits on his side for a year or 6 months and looks at a model of the nation of Israel, or the prophet walks naked through the town square. Like there's some real, in the prophetic tradition, there's some real subversive stuff. Even the act
Right.
of like, I'm going to go, it's performance art. I'm going to go get married to someone to preach a metaphor.
Right.
It's
Right.
there's layers upon layers, and it makes me so uncomfortable, but it feels like that's kind of the point of the thing, right?
Mm-hmm. And
Well,
that he was doing this in 1998.
right.
Yes.
You know, it's
well,
like,
and
what?
and I love too that this feels very much in the like Elliott Smith milieu.
Yeah.
Like
No,
like
I
musically
wrote, I
it
meant to share
sounds
earlier,
like
I wrote
Elliott
this is
Smith.
Elliott Smith, but like a baritone bass vocal.
Right. Yeah,
That's the only difference.
yeah.
And he was definitely like, you know, for his cultural paradigm, like you could say he was kind of like a prophet, or like a figure, an iconic figure that
Mhm.
a lot of people sort of gravitated towards. So I definitely see the overlap there.
Do you want to go to the bells?
Of course I want to go to the bells, man. Here's track number 9, the bells.
Dude, the heartbreak of Dad, I Broke a Promise to You, like that just so there's certain songs that feel super earnest and straightforward, and he's the narrator.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's songs that are like there's some cynicism to it, or there's some layers of like you're not supposed to sympathize and empathize with the narrator of Minor Prophets, right? Like you're I don't think that's what you're supposed to do. And to have them back to back, the hard switch to like there's no like layers of Dad, I Broke a Promise to You.
Right.
That's just that at least for how I read it, like that's me. That's I think fully Dave at the time, just wanting that absolution and restoration. I don't know.
Yeah,
Dude,
completely.
Okay, for all the perceived misogyny and issues with women, like this is just such a siren song for what I feel like is like emo boys just all have daddy issues. And I was actually talking to my dad about this. He was like, "Oh, you know, I've been dating all these women that are like around your age." I'm like, "That's weird as hell." He's like, "All these girls your age have daddy issues." I was like, "Dad, everybody has daddy issues." And
yeah, just simplify it.
yeah, exactly. Everybody,
Everyone,
yourself
all of
included.
us.
Everybody has daddy issues, whether it's daddy God or daddy. You know, and
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love how this song just sort of plays on the father-son relationship just like so effortlessly. Like you have to take a second to think about who is the narrator in this song, because it just shifts back and forth so effortlessly.
Yeah. It's a story. It's a children's book, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But in complementary, like it's a fable, right? Where
Right.
when you're reading a conversation in a book, they don't always say asked the son, said
Right.
the father, right?
Right.
The
It just
dialogue goes back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, so good.
Have you guys read? Have you guys, speaking of dad stuff? Have you read The Road by Cormac McCarthy?
Of course. Oh yeah.
Okay. But this is so the dialogue in a lot of McCarthy's books, but this one especially, there's no quotes around who's talking, so you just you internalize that this is who's speaking at what point. You just sort of pick up by
You
your
intuit it. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. Yeah.
And again, that's how that's how it seamlessly works when Dave changes the lyrics, right? I understand self.
Yeah.
I understand self. It's because it's so seamless and there's so much sort of poetic symmetry between the two characters and how they're really like the same person and in so many ways and going through the same experiences. It's just one's already done it. The other one is still moving into that part of that season of life. It's another raw gut puncher, man, but beautiful.
Yeah.
It's very
Fuck
beautiful.
you, Dave.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Like, I'm so mad. Stop punching me in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with that great trim guitar too.
Oh,
tasteful.
okay,
Tasteful
Josh.
trim.
This is my big note for you. I do love a good tremolo. My big note on this song is like, I think it might be just a little too much tremolo for me to
It's
vibe
also
with.
the rhythm of the tremolo is almost in tempo, but not quite.
Not
Right.
quite. Yep.
Right.
That
But
stuff
trim doesn't
bothers
have
me,
to be.
I'll be honest.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, no, I fully expect to be wrong on this, but it's just a little too much.
Like
tremolo for
too
me.
much mix in there.
I
like
think, I was gonna say
too
like the
throbby
drummer
for
brain
ya.
in me, like I have to. The trim either has to be like so off that it's like, oh, this is a creative choice, or it has to be locked in. And this one to me was like a little bit too close to right, but not right, and it just drove me bonkers.
Well, think about it, it's analog. It's an analog trem pedal
Right.
Yeah.
or like an
They didn't
actual
have
amp
they
with a
didn't
trem
have
setting.
tap tempo
Yeah.
trim back then.
And I totally
Yes.
get it. Like I can sort of forgive the non-exactness
for sure.
of it, but it still bothered me.
Okay,
Like,
well,
there's
thank
more
you,
subconscious.
thank you, TJ,
In the back of my
for-
mind is like,
for vibe guying out to this with
oh,
me.
for sure,
It's
man.
like,
yeah,
I love it. I love it. It's a perfect musical choice. It's just a little too off for me to like fully appreciate.
Yeah, the tone is great though. It's really
It is.
pretty.
It is.
And also, I wanted to say this to me could be in like if they were to do sort of like a Pedro anthology someday down the road. This could be just a trilogy with Big Trucks and Longest Winter, the father son
Yeah.
trilogy, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like I think Big Trucks is first, because it's got that kind of like machismo energy, like
Right.
the Trans Am, like the learning to drive, all of that stuff. That's like more younger dude stuff, you know?
Right.
Like
Ben,
And then-
I love you pointing out the Cormac McCarthy thing.
yeah,
That
completely.
yeah, it kind of changes my perspective on a lot of this.
Mhm.
Like that's a really good parallel.
Say more. What are you? Like, what are you talking about?
Well, I don't know. To kind of talk about, like, to piggyback on what TJ was saying, the sort of like machismo, like very masculine energy, and the conversations between father and son. Like, I don't know. I hadn't fully tracked that, but both of those things together sort of synthesize into a cathartic experience for me that resonates in the same way that a lot of McCarthy's work does.
You're
Yeah.
also in the road. I'm never quite sure if I'm totally thinking that the father is the good father. Like there's
Right.
so many. Like he's trying so hard, but he's
That's good.
in it. He lives in a traumatic world, but he's also traumatizing his kid in so many ways.
Right.
And there's still ultimately a sympathy that you have towards the father trying to protect his son in a harsh and broken world, right? And I think that Bazan's characters are the same way where you can criticize them, and you should maybe,
Right.
but you also can empathize with them as like the intention for most of these guys is not actually that bad. It
Right.
gets twisted,
They're
but the
trying their
intention-
best though. Right. They're
Right.
trying their best.
Yeah, and that's why I like the trilogy order in like Big Trucks, because there's like still like an uplifting message there. Longest Winter in the middle because that's
Yeah.
like the act 2, and it's a little dark, and it's like, hey, don't be like me, like I'm the cautionary tale, don't like turn into the sad loner that has a cat for a wife. And then Bells being this kind of open, accepting response to failure or sin or flaws or mistakes, and ultimately self-acceptance. And the father, like the reparenting thing that you're talking about, to me is like the whole thing that is like a key in the lock to change the whole paradigm. Like even if it's not from God or dad or whatever, like offering yourself that kind of acceptance and understanding can be so powerful. So it's like, yeah, I guess it's the father son trilogy until it until it transcends that paradigm and then
Right.
becomes something else entirely. But
Well, I was just going to say that's what's mythic about. You keep talking about
Right.
like the mythic levels. That's
Right.
what feels mythic about it. Of like it works for whether you're relating to yourself or you're relating to your actual earthly dad or your heavenly father.
right,
It's awesome.
so good, man. He packed it
All
all in there.
Yeah, he did. All right, let's move on to track number 10, Secret of the Easy Yoke.
What a riff! What a riff!
So good.
He's
so good.
he's doing the pinky thing of da na 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 na. Like he's playing one guitar, playing the lead and the chord at the same time. It's a simple lead, but he's doing both. And this was one of the first songs that I truly loved playing on guitar. Like I think when I first learned guitar, it was like Wonderwall or whatever, that
Right.
like
Yeah.
I'm learning, or whatever what classic rock song does my guitar teacher want to teach me? But this was the first one that I like brought to my guitar teacher to like figure out like what is going on here. Can you teach me how to play this?
Nice.
And so again, it was like one of the first drop D songs that I learned. This is a song that I just play myself whenever I like pick up a guitar and put it to drop D. It's like I'll just play that B minor riff, and covered it in my college bands, and have
Nice.
covered it, covered it in a couple different bands since then. The other thought I had on this song is that of the narrator stuff, this feels like 100% Dave. This is just him and his earnest self, heartfelt plea. There's no layers of irony or metaphor in it. It's just
Right.
The way that I read is it's just him.
Yeah. I mean, even that opening line on the chorus, the question, could someone please tell me the story of Sinner's Ransom from the Fall? I still have never seen you, and some days I don't love you at all. Like that just feels so like heart on sleeve, something he's been wrestling with and just had to get out. Like it was like pushing up from his soul out into the world, like he had to like express it and get it out and externalize it.
Well, and it's interesting for me, like, because I came to Pedro later post like deconversion, like, but like just going to some of this when he would still like have identified as a Christian and being within that, it's like you see this of like the issues that he has, and specifically in this song he mentions like it's like hard to trust, like I'm losing steam, and you're like, oh dang, you did lose steam, like, so that makes that song like even more sad, I feel like.
Right.
But,
having the perspective
but it is
of
like
how the
story, like how it unfolds, because the ending, but you don't know it when it comes out, or like when you're listening to it, Ben, when you first hear this record. But yeah, there's still like that chorus is so good though, but it's like I said, it's something that a lot of people would be too scared to write, let alone record and release. But I think it's something we can all like relate to.
Absolutely.
The bridge, the last verse into the bridge at the end, where he's, like, if all that's left is duty, I'm falling on my sword. And that's fairly visceral. I don't think that's a metaphor. There's been times in my life where I'm like, if my life does not hold meaning that is profound and that links me to something other than just my own experience and my own tastes and preferences and wants and desires, then what's the point of all this?
Completely.
Right? Yeah. And so that's just not poetry. That like feels like dude's like actually like, I'm gonna fall on my sword,
right?
Not just spiritually and kill the faith. It's like, what's the point of my life without some meaning here and some connection? And then the response to it is this long instrumental bridge where the vocal recording is almost like he's back from the mic. And he says, peace be still, but it's like he's almost walking into another room, which is like such an interesting choice. But that's either in the who's talking right now, that's either the voice of Jesus, which is the thing. Jesus said, peace be still.
Right.
That's either the Lord speaking or it's yourself speaking to yourself. To like, it's going to be okay, but like, you may not have all the things figured it out and all the answers to all the questions,
but
like
offering yourself some soothing, comforting words.
Yeah.
I love it. And that's why I think this should have been the last track on the album.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Hot take Tej over here, but I love the
I
outro. I
agree.
love the length of
I
it.
agree. It should have been.
It feels like such a great punctuation.
So you're not suggesting that they cut the last two songs. You're just saying let's reorder the track.
Let's restructure.
Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
I don't have as much opinion about that, to be honest.
Okay. Because the last song,
I just
Promise,
think this should be the last song.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I'm there. But Promise, the last song, is my favorite song on the record. So if you
we got there early. Surprise.
If you're gonna say cut it, I was gonna fight you.
Come up to Portland, brother. Let's make this
right. Well, okay, we have two more tracks. Let's move on to track number 11, The Well.
If you could really see.
So this is like woman at the well metaphor.
Yeah,
Right.
I didn't realize there was going to be so many Bible stories. Like I didn't know Dave was taking us to Sunday
the whole
school
like
on
last
this early record.
Yeah, especially like how it's sequenced. Like so that is cool. Like how it is sequenced because like you go through all those regular songs and then it's like then we get into Bible stuff and then it like stays like biblical Christianity stuff, which is was interesting. I didn't expect there to be this much on here.
Yeah, took me off, like caught me off guard.
This is too much tremolo.
Okay. All right, Kylan.
I thought the other track was like almost too much. This is too much.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree
my
with that.
note on this is this because of the trem, it feels very Starflyer. And now I'm going to be offended because if you're saying it's too much, you're saying Starflyer's trem is too much.
Yeah. Okay. I
So
might.
what's the timing on that first Starfly record? Was that before this?
Yeah,
or was that
94.
after?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Well, and I was gonna mention on the outro of "Secret of the Easy Yoke" that is like it just is like has that big outro and musically. And I heard an interview of Matt Carter from Emory talking to Dave, and they were specifically talking about control of how like Dave has a tendency to like just like for like the last minute or so just jam and make things really big instead of like winding things down. And he's like, yeah, that's just me ripping off Starflyer because that's what he does. And so I wanted to mention that. So yeah, Starflyer does predate and Dave has some influence from Jason on that. So
I'm so glad that we're best friends because those were my two notes. Too much tremolo. This reminds me of a Starflyer song. I don't know what Starflyer song, but just vibe-wise.
it's kind of like, yeah, the vibe of silver and gold. You can like, that's just kind of what it is. Yep.
I also just one funny personal connection is I remember a friend from like early days in high school. This was a woman that like did not have a lot of like biblical background or like church background, but she was really into like sad slowcore stuff like Pedro or whatever, and we were like kind of dating at the time. And she did not get the reference that it was like the woman at the well and just thought that it was written just from a female perspective of like a potential partner or spouse
that's
or whatever.
great.
Interesting.
Yeah. And she earnestly, and I think it's a valid read because again, it's outside of the control of the artist. It's in the hands of the listener, and they take as much context or as little as they have. But she literally, as we were like, I was kind of being maybe a little bit of a piece of shit or whatever. She was like, I just want to find a guy that would love me like this.
Oh,
And I was like the
You're like,
computation in my
Right.
head of like, oh, that's an indictment against me, but also I'm like, but that's Jesus.
That's Jesus. Let me
You
introduce you to
goodness.
my best friend Jesus.
Yeah.
oh, backdoor witnessing moment.
Yeah.
I love that. That is like such a late 90s, early 2000s like emo Christian boy thought.
Yeah, what a
Yeah.
niche experience.
It's like
to
it's
have.
so specific, but god damn it, that is this whole show. And thank you for sharing that.
But I do really, Ben, yeah, thanks, because I love that this song, that like it proves kind of our sort of theory about songs having infinite versions of themselves and iterations in people's minds and hearts. The fact that she could have a completely different read on this and not have any idea about this story that for a lot of us is like, you know, old hat at this point. It's like, okay, yeah, the woman
Right.
at the well, I get it, whatever. But the fact that she was able to have like a fresh and novel interpretation that made you think and challenged you a little bit, it's kind of
Right.
cool. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of sick.
Because her read was just as valid as mine, even though I had the
Right.
well, actually, it's about
Yeah, yeah.
It's about a Bible story. Yeah. And hers may be more valid
Yeah.
for it, you know, like because
I
it was
kinda-
so pure.
Yeah, listening to
And-
this song now with maybe a little bit more cynicism, or especially towards how Bazan would maybe relate to the song, is I kind of roll my eyes of like,
Right.
you know, like this is just a straight Bible song. It's propaganda, you
Yeah,
know, like,
right.
yeah,
It definitely, I think, is the least sort of lyrically original or like inspired in the way that we have come to
Mm.
know Bazan's writing today, right?
Yeah,
Like
there's not
it
layers
feels a
to it.
little basic. It's kind of
Yeah.
which that's fine because the idea works on its own. It's simple.
Right.
It's a simple idea.
Yeah, I did not expect a song like this on here. I fully expect songs like "Secret of the Easy Yoke" and stuff like that. But then this, I was like, that was just a straightforward, like what seems to me as like a simple, sincere gospel song. I was like, I did not expect
Right.
this on a Pedro
Right.
record.
Right. It's a surprise for sure.
Well, because he's this is fresh after like the whole EP
Mhm.
where it's like that's his first release or whatever. It's like Mr. Whole Fix It Man. There's like a real,
Mm.
genuine like, can you
Mm.
fix me internally, oh Lord Jesus? And
Mhm.
this is he covers on, I forget which record it was. He covers "Be Thou My Vision," right?
Right.
And
Right.
that doesn't seem like a cover with cynicism and layers. Like
Mhm.
it
Yeah, it's
feels
just
like
straightforward.
this is straightforward, right? So, well, he contains multitudes at this point,
Yes.
you know, like
Absolutely.
bold.
Keeps you guessing.
transition to this
Yeah.
last song too, because this one's a very gospel-y song.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, Josh, you have not said your favorite song, right?
Yeah.
I haven't said my new favorite song yet. I had my old favorite,
Right.
Big Trucks. I still have a new favorite song.
Is it Promise? Do you promise this is your new favorite
Don't
song?
lie, Josh.
I do promise.
You better
This is my
promise us.
new
Okay,
favorite.
So Ben already spoiled it. It's his favorite song.
Correct.
Josh, it's your new favorite song. Guys, this is also my favorite song on the record.
What?
Oh, that's so
Here
cute.
we go. Last track, Promise.
Unpredictable. Now Jesus said he'd fill my needs, but my heart still bleeds.
So it's just it's so gosh darned earnest. Like
is.
there's a purity and a childlikeness to it, because there's like if a kid would be afraid of the sky falling, right? Like a kid
Right.
would maybe not know enough about the natural world to be like, Dad, is the sky going to disappear? And I don't know, man, it works as like a genuine, like I've kind of either talked myself into belief. You could be cynical and say like maybe like this is the temporary moment for David Bazan or the narrator or like whatever.
Right.
But this feels super like he actually it's the earnest Lord, I believe, help my unbelief,
Right.
which is just and it's a goddamn earworm. It's so catchy.
It's so good.
and
Okay.
just so good.
One of my biggest things about this record is I love the like relatively lo-fi immediate production of it.
Mhm.
And I wrote on this song would 1,000% benefit from a sort of Chris Lord Alge compress the shit out of everything
Double
pop
track
production.
all the guitars. Yeah.
Yeah.
This song
nice
needs
and
to
tight.
be 1,000 times bigger.
And longer.
Yeah.
It's too short.
Yeah.
It's the shortest song on the record, and it needs to be longer.
Mhm.
But he has the instincts of the pop instincts because
Oh, yeah, they're there.
he the second chorus he doubles the vocal and jumps the octave,
Yes.
which is so pop punk or like rock music, to do that. He like is letting himself write a pop song because that he can, based upon all the Beatlesiness and the Beach
Right.
Boysiness or whatever. But he's like almost hiding it under the lo-fi production and the weird aesthetic choices.
Right.
And this is where he kind of opens up that like, yeah, fuck you, I can write a pop song.
I know, that's what made me mad, because like, you could have been doing this the
save
whole
it
time.
for the last song on the
end.
record. I'm like I'm a little bit mad. I'm like, why? Like, you're gonna
Best
make
for
me
last,
wait
buddy.
for the last fucking song? But
Best
Yeah,
for last.
dude, it's so good. Okay, so I want to talk music theory for just a second.
Do it.
What?
Go off, King.
My favorite part is this progression because he like alternates between the sort of main progression and then he has like a hook progression, but the main part of it is he starts on the 1, goes to the 2, to the 4, which 1, 2, 4 is automatically I'm 1,000% on board with. That's 75% of the songs that I write. And then he goes to the flat 7 right after that. He goes I'm like, okay, I'm so mad. It's so good. Why have I never done that? I'm so mad. It's so good.
Pretty clever.
It's
I love
so
it.
good. It's very Beatles, very Beach Boys, and it is perfect for the closing song on this record.
Like if you
Man.
were actually wanting to make a hit record, you would have almost completely flipped the track order, where
Right.
you would have just Promise would have
Yeah.
been the second track. You would have done something like fairly upbeat, like Big Trucks or whatever, as the
Mhm.
first song, and then you would have done Promise as like the second or the third track,
Right.
just to be the
Mhm.
thing that hooks people.
yeah.
But just either the foolishness or the confidence to just like do
to
the
save
opposite
it for
thing.
the last track? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Fuck you, Dave Bazan. Why did you make me wait till the end? It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bold move for sure. And I just think I don't know. Maybe I'm sort of noticing my own kind of hangups or preferences that might be a little traditionalist, perhaps. But I think like when earlier when I was talking about The Secret of the Easy Yoke, that being a better closing track, because it has the outro jam and it has like
Right.
the long, kind of
Yeah.
track run time, and I still I'm falling back on that. I'm wanting that still, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I can hold both. I can hold like kind of my preference, and I can
Mhm.
also hold how badass of a move it is to just
Short,
Well,
sweet
no,
banger.
it's like-
Go out on a
yes.
short, sweet
Any
banger. Yeah.
expectations that a listener might have, and it just be like, nope, this is the record.
Yeah.
Promise is last, and it's the poppiest, like radio ready song on
Right.
the album.
It makes me
I-
so mad, but I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I want to know what the singles were, if any, from this record. Do we have the?
Yeah.
I don't know this lore because I've only encountered this after the fact, where I just listened to it as an album.
as a record, yeah.
Yeah, but like, did Jade Tree, or because it was clearly re-released, remastered, and re-released on Jade
right.
Tree. Like, did they shove
Surely
it
they
around a
pushed a
college radio
single.
or whatever?
Yeah, Big Trucks.
I want to know
maybe.
what it is.
I feel like
Yeah.
gotta.
Oh,
There's
there
gotta be
was
something.
a Big Trucks was a 7-inch single in
There
1998
you go.
on Made in Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, before J Tree. even.
before
Wow,
J
cool.
Tree. Yeah, I don't see anything for that J Tree did for the re-release.
But nothing about Promise, huh?
No promise, man. No promise.
We-
Only Big
We
Trucks.
can't promise you that David Bazan will have a.
It's because it's too short.
A single
if
anywhere
he,
that
if
makes
he done
sense.
like a bridge and then another chorus, easy lead
Well,
single.
he does a
sure.
bridge where with the polyrhythmic guitar part, like the when
Right.
that's such a big surprise, you know,
Mhm.
what a nice surprise. That's a
Mm.
bridge, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like 5 seconds.
It's so
long.
fast.
Yes,
Yeah, right.
yes. And you know what? That's my favorite part of the song.
Yeah.
I love that part of the song. Like that drew me in more than anything else. I loved the whole song, but I definitely really clicked sonically with that part. So and it was so short. Like
I know. Okay, so the
There's
big
a-
takeaway is fuck you, Dave Bazan. For this is too good. Why is this at the end of the album? But it's perfect. You started your album with a song that's like what? Fucking 88 BPM in 6/8?
Got slow.
And you
track
end with
2,
this?
and
Like,
then-
come on, man. I'm so mad. That's so good.
hmm
It's too good.
Pretty
Yeah.
insane. Somehow he made it happen.
I know.
There's an artistic integrity though to just the trusting your gut about these sort of things,
right.
even if it's not the commercial choice. Like there's
Totally.
there's a song that it's gonna be a single. It's not on the next record that my band's doing, but it's gonna be like a standalone A side B side single with 2 songs that we'll do next spring, and it is 2 minutes long. A minute of that is an instrumental intro that happens and it just abruptly ends. And every time we play it live, there's always like a it's also one of our catchiest songs that we've ever
Right.
written. And every time we play it live, there's always like a confusion of like
That was
it's
it.
over. We were just getting going. And we got so much like hate feedback from like, you've gotta like add a bridge, make it longer, do it again, like or whatever. And there was just something in me that was a little bit like,
You're just like, nope.
I'm
Nope.
good, man. No, I like
We're
that
not
song.
doing
that's,
that.
that's how that song goes.
Dude,
You like
I
it?
love
Listen
it.
to it again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
So we listened to this entire record, and I doubt that there is any confusion about whether this is a flop or a bop
We've been real on the fence about the whole thing.
for most of us. But, we have to do it for the
For
sake of the show.
sake of
For
tradition.
the sake of
That's
the
true.
art form that
Okay,
is church jams
so,
now.
Ben, you brought this record to us. This obviously was very important to you. It would be surprising to me if after all of this you were like, fuck this record, it sucks.
No.
It's a flop. So I want to know right now. Let's get it out of the way. Was this record a flop or a bop for you?
Maybe it's a bop. It's a bop, man.
Hell
Woo, woo.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, why was it a bop for you, man? Like from 1998 to 2000 or whenever you first heard this record to 2023, why is it a bop still in 2023?
I think the songwriting's there, and it feels like watching an artist that somehow sprang up from the ground fully formed. There's
Right.
so much creativity and instinct and a genuine authenticity of these are my tastes and these are my instincts.
Right.
And the specific of the story, both his experience as David Bazan, but then the characters that then becomes the thing that we all want to lean into and listen to because it becomes the universal.
Right.
So I think that it's just very fun to listen to, and it has years of traction with me of returning to it. So there's something instinctual about my need
Right.
for it's hard to find a friend.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
There's like
Okay.
some deep nostalgia there, but also if you came to it today, you're like, there's so much to mine
Right.
through.
I think I would I think I would struggle through the first half of the record, and then and then it would absolutely like just scoop me up in its arms. Yeah.
Well, without putting like too fine a point on it, if anyone listening to this show has never heard A Place for Owls, if you like this record, fucking go listen to A Place for Owls. like
That's true.
There is a definite through line. Like there is a similar sort of like authenticity and musicality that
I want to know though, is in A Place for Owls, is there a place for Juan the Owl specifically? That's why you named your band that, huh? Gotcha.
Right?
Dude, Josh, have you been sitting on that all goddamn night?
I just realized it. I was like, his band is an owl too.
Dude, there's so many layers to that. There's the just the love of the animal band name that Pedro the Lion, I think, gave me. I did not actually know that the production company or whatever was Juan the Owl.
His music publishing,
yeah, I looked it up today. But we're also kind of named after a low-level owl with the
Appleseed Cast.
With what? Appleseed Cast. Why did I blank on that? Yeah.
It's
so
okay.
There's
we'll cut the part where you didn't remember.
My favorite band.
What's the song? What's the name?
Okay,
TJ.
Well, Kylan, I am feeling a little bit like I think you often do.
I'm ready. I'm so ready for this.
Because I think you quickly gained the understanding from our followers as a ska miser and got a lot of flack for that. And you've been able to kind of come back into the good graces of those who maybe were a little frustrated with you for that earlier on. And
well,
I
hey, TJ, can I tell you?
Tell me.
The secret of an easy yoke is that I can pretend to be a ska miser, but I really kind of secretly love it.
And that makes what I'm about to say really hard.
Oh,
y'all,
no.
this album flops for me.
Oh,
and
really?
Here's the thing.
Oh, really?
I couldn't like draw it out any longer because I didn't want to I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings for any longer. Okay, here's the deal. I think I'm an early Pedro miser. I think I love what Bazan figured out over the course of his career, and especially what he started to dial in on Curse Your Branches. I think that was the inflection point for me, being like, I like what you're doing so much, and it really resonates, it really lands. The thing is, though, this album is not like a clear flop. It really is like it was right on the fence, and it just falls on the flop side because I think, for one thing, we mentioned Elliott Smith earlier. I have been trying to figure out, listening to this album, why it doesn't click with me as much as some of his stuff does. And I think it's the vocal quality, the tone, the range of voice. I think his lower voice register doesn't really click with me as much. So what I've noticed is that more of his later work, he uses his upper register more. And I love his voice. So that's not me naysaying Bazan's voice, but I think his lower register and the kind of like slacker vocal style that he was a little more prone to use, I think, earlier on in that lower register, just like the melody could be great, the song structure could be great, the arrangement could be great. I'm even down for the kind of DIY like 90s analog like whole deal of this album. But his vocal register, there's something about it that like I do fall asleep. The lyrics draw me in, and that none of that was a bit. Like, I couldn't bop this conversation harder because analyzing these lyrics, talking about it, all of that, getting into the nitty gritty of who he is as a person, his journey, your experience with the music, Ben, is like really profound and really moving to me. And so it's lighting him up as a musician and as an artist in a new way for me. But I have to still say that if I were to sit down and listen to this album on my own, not in the context of these beautiful faces in front of me right now that I'm talking to and having great conversation with. But if I were just in a room on my own listening to this album, I'd be like, I'm kind of bored a little bit. It's not because the songwriting's not there. It's not because he's not a killer player. The fact that he plays the drums on this album, I have mad respect for that, and the guitar work, and probably wrote the bass parts, right? Even though there was a different bassist. Like he's the full package. And I think that I just want him to be a little bit better than he is in this iteration, sort of as
That's
a vocal
valid.
performer.
Yeah.
As a vocal performer and kind of like the songwriting. Like I really feel like Christian Branch is like, he kind of got so clean and like tight with his songwriting. I don't know. And also it's probably just more of a nostalgia thing for me. That album like hit me at the right time, right place, right way. And I don't have all of those like emotional and experiential associations with this album at all, right? Like I dropped into it in 2023, and it's,
man,
it's music from an artist that I came to know and love later in his career. So I was going off of that paradigm of like, this is David Bazan.
Well, it's almost like if you had never heard Nashville Skyline by Bob Dylan and you hear his country voice for the first time, where he's like, like you would be like, that's not the same person, and the songwriting's still there, but like, why did he make that performative?
What was that
choice?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
that sums it up well.
I kind of resonate with the vocal stuff because he gets an agedness to his voice where when he goes high in he's a baritone, but when he tries to sing like a tenor, when he's pushing it, there's a heartbreakingness and a plaintiveness to that that is not replicated when he's in the lower register. So I can empathize and see that.
Yeah, there's an emotional like pull that happens in that higher space vocally, and totally, that stuff gets me every time. And I see him do that a lot live too.
Yes,
which I love. Like he's like really reaching for it and really throwing himself fully into the performance. So I could also say as a caveat that I think if I saw this album live, I think it would be a bop, full on, without any like hesitance at all. And I reserve the right to change my flop assessment
for sure
as we go further through this catalog.
But man, oh man, I gotta tell you, I am so excited for a like classic articulated TJ flop. I feel like it's been a long time coming, man. Like,
it has, because I've been really like stoked on things, and I just had to like draw the line on this one, but I had to qualify it too because I have to.
Right,
I have to
and
make
that was
it make sense.
So beautiful and articulate, and I love it, and it all makes so much sense.
And it's a little sad too, isn't it?
It is, but
like,
you know what?
That's
totally valid, and that's the whole show, because I personally feel like our show would not be as interesting if we were all just constantly like, this record
I'm not
fucking
trying to
rules.
throw bops out willy-nilly,
right?
Like I'm very particular.
And if anyone was to flop this record, it 100% makes sense for you, because you can like, you've kind of
I'll
like,
send y'all my dissertation on it.
Yeah,
later.
no. You've kind of
in
like
this essay,
persuaded me to your side.
Exactly.
I'm like, yes, this all makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm a total vibe guy. I'm a total sad emo boy.
Totally.
And yeah, I mean, this is like Christian Elliott Smith. I'm like,
yep.
Well, I wasn't allowed to listen to Elliott Smith, but I was allowed to listen to this, and I was like, yeah, I'm sad the same way he's sad.
Yep.
Yeah.
This record is perfect for me. I love it. It's so good.
Yeah, dude.
So I am much less articulate than you, but this is a bop for me.
No
Very
less
nice.
valid
Very
and
nice.
real. And I think you actually summed
But
it up
different.
well. Yeah. But different.
Right. Okay. So it comes down to you. beautiful producer Josh.
DPJ.
It falls to
Are
me
you
whether
going to break Ben's heart? Our
already
guest
did.
on the show.
I know it falls to me whether I can half and half it here in line with TJ, or we can do majority rule.
Right.
So I will say, going into this record, I was honestly like, I'm not really, because I listened to it a little bit in the past, but nothing like super memorable. And like I said, I like a lot of later Pedro stuff. So I went in and I was like, I might have to flop this. Like, I was not really like looking forward to it, honestly. But I was like, I'll listen to it. And then I listened to it, and I really enjoyed it. And like, obviously, Dave's lyric stuff is easy to just like draw you in and be like, whoa, this is so good. But there was just like,
kind of like, you know what? I'm so sorry to interrupt, Josh, but
I'm gonna let you finish.
It's kind of similar to when we talked to Carson about Switchfoot and John Foreman, of like, there are a few guys within the milieu of what we talk about on this show that there is a certain expectation of lyrical exceptionism, right? Like, they're just so good that there is a potential for flopping if they don't hit that.
Yep.
They're not perfect.
To live
it's a
up
failure.
to their own
Right,
expectations.
because there is like such an expectation of like, oh fuck, this guy is so good at this very specific thing. If it does not hit that mark, it can be a flop. So,
yeah.
I will just
Relative
give
to
that.
itself.
his worst song could be someone else's best song, but you're still like,
Exactly.
this is not up to your standard. Yeah,
exactly. So I will give that caveat before you give your flop or bop.
It's true.
verdict.
It's true. But I was listening to this at work, and I was just like caught up in just like a lot of the musical moments, especially in like the later half of the record, like some of the Well and Secret of the Easy Yoke and the bells. Oof, like just like the music of it was vibing hard with me. So I went in expecting a flop and was pleasantly surprised that I will give this a bop.
Hey,
A strong one at that.
A strong one.
A strong one.
Strong
I really
bop.
enjoyed it.
Bop.
from Josh.
That's
Nice,
beautiful.
Man. That's good. I'm glad we went 75-25 on this one. That makes me happy.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, TJ, I'm not mad at you for flopping this.
Just disappointed.
No.
You understand?
Yeah.
Do you understand?
No. Okay. I'm not even disappointed, man. Like, I get it. It 1,000% makes sense.
I appreciate it.
And I like that we all came to a bop sans TJ from different perspectives. Like,
I think what we've learned
it
here
all makes
lot of
sense.
range.
if The Promise is your favorite song, you're going to bop it. If it's not, you're going to flop it.
Right.
If you want the Western Story songs, well,
There's one.
there's one on there. Yeah. And I love that thing.
Yeah.
No, I love
It's
The
so
Promise
good.
too. That song rules. I probably would bop an EP, and it probably would be the faster songs. I'd probably
There it
bop
is.
like,
Yeah.
Big Trucks and The Promise and and including the Easy Yoke. I'd probably do a 4-song EP with Big Trucks. What's the one I like? Suspect Fled the Scene,
Mm-hmm.
The Promise, and then Easy Yoke.
Would you include?
I'd bop that.
It's wild to me that Bad Diary Days is like one of his most streamed songs or whatever, and
Right.
in a lot of ways feels like the emo classic.
Right.
And none of us picked that one.
I was
And
about to say
even
that. Yeah.
we even kind of ripped it up a little bit, you know.
Yeah, I would
Right.
include Bad Dairy Days, I think.
Yeah. There you go.
There you
That
go.
song gets a stone cold bop from me.
Right.
I can take that. Tell us about your band.
There you go. Thank
yeah.
you, beautiful
Yeah,
producer
plugs.
Josh.
Give us some plugs.
So, a place for owls. We just, our
place
big
for
thing that just
plugs.
happened to us. A place for plugs.
Yep.
The big thing that just happened to us is we did three dates with Switchfoot, which was a ridiculous situation. We are we're never going to open for one of the biggest rock groups in the world.
You peaked. You did it.
Yeah, I know. We immediately, like the Saturday after we got back from tour, I played the DIY punk venue to like 60 sweaty kids opening for an emo band that I love called Awake But Still in Bed. And so it was just a great sort of like super huge sold out club shows with one of the largest Christian rock groups in the world, and then queer emo kids even in a DIY space. So
what an excellent dichotomy.
I know. Yeah. So that's the sort of stuff we got coming up. We're playing shows locally in Denver. We finished recording our second full length that's going to come out next year, probably realistically, because we're likely going to self-fund it and self-release it, but do vinyl and do an actual physical release.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's to get the logistics and vinyl production schedule and money together. It's likely the next LP is going to be like next late summer at the earliest.
Sweet.
Cool.
And if there's any big bands that listen to this podcast, we're really trying to get the, you know, like the church jams now sort of heyday. Like we're trying to open for May. We would really like
nice.
That's on the bucket list of we would really like to, because they're still going and going strong. Right. So we would like them. We also, you know, pick your poison of the peak emo and youth group stuff. So we would like to be the go-to emerging band that plays for some of the, you know, the giant classics in this scene that we're talking about.
I love that. Yeah. I feel like you figured out a good lane. That's like a good place to hang out, you know.
I would like for you to be that too.
Yeah. There's also it's also weird to play with a bunch of like godless punk bands and then also play with some of the biggest.
Right. Yeah.
Totally.
No, that's
so fun.
That dichotomy is what has been the most interesting to me. Like I love it.
Me
it's
too.
Perfect. Sweet. Okay. If you like nonsense like this, we have more like it at at patreon.com/churchhymnsnowpodcast. Follow us on all the social media at Church Hymns Now, and of course follow Denver Emo Band, A Place for Owls. May all your favorite bands stay together, and peace out, Monfreres.